Compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice requirements have been satisfied. Meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year. Copies of all revised or additional meeting notices are sent via fax to the record, Silver Overnight, and Northern Valley Press, and are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the Municipal Center. Once again, for those that may not be familiar with our process, this is a combined meeting. We have a work session. Following the work session, we normally stay here lightly rather than go into the big room, but we do have a public meeting, at which time public comment will be taken. Public comment is taken prior to any official actions that are made, so if you don't have to worry. You have an opportunity to speak before we do any voting. The work session is where we discuss what we're going to do in the public meeting. So the first items on to be considered are two ordinances from the planning board. 1717 and 1718. 1717 is the two homes on Highwood Avenue that are scheduled to be considered for designation in our public meeting, and the planning board was asked for a recommendation, taking everything that we know at this time into account, and they made a motion and voted to recommend to the council that these homes be designated. 1718 is the ordinance to amend and supplement the tree ordinance. This was brought to the table by Councilman Bash, and we've discussed it. We've discussed it with Bob Culvert and with the engineer, and everybody seems to think that these improvements will make a difference. They are more stringent. They make the ordinance a little bit more stringent, especially for developers. Our
only for the
borough attorney has approved them. He actually wrote, I think you wrote this.
I wrote it.
Wrote it. So it's up to the council to discuss both of these items at this particular point in time. So can we do 1717 first? Anybody have any discussion on the houses? Lisette, did everybody get an opportunity to see the letter from Mr. Farley that you sent tonight?
I emailed it to everyone, and there's a hard copy in everybody's.
Yes.
Has everybody had an opportunity to look at that?
I read that, yes.
Okay.
Yes, we have.
Any comments on, I'm sorry?
No, there was a gentleman that wanted to speak. I was telling him it's not time yet.
There'll be time to speak in the public meeting before we make any decisions. Any comments or thoughts, questions on 1717? How about 1718? Anybody want to
I have a question about 1717. Are both the owners not in favor of the historic? I read
That's correct.
somewhere that
That's
they
correct.
were both not in favor of
Yes.
it, right?
Yes.
I guess they haven't spoken in front of the council, right?
They have both spoken in front
I
of the council.
must have missed that meeting. Sorry about that.
The young lady
Yes, you were not there.
I was not
You were
here
not
then.
here
I'm sorry
when they
about
come.
that.
The
young
only
lady
letter we
at
received.
93 has been consistently opposed to this from the get-go. Mr. Farley at 89, my own opinion, and nobody disagreed when I said it a couple of times, was rather ambiguous throughout the process. At the last meeting, he had sent us a letter from his attorney, and he has changed his mind. He is now
Against it.
and he personally wrote a strong letter opposing it that we got today.
The other person had a verbal appearance over here, and she basically opposed it, but we have not received any correspondence. Is that correct? Yep. So
Well, I
the
don't
only
think we have
correspondence.
any doubt as to where the owners stand on either house. They're opposed to it.
Yeah, but I'm trying to say, there was no legal representation asking for the other letter. No.
Well, we don't ask for any such
We
letters.
didn't ask. I'm asking if there was or not.
Well, no, we got a letter from Mr. Farley's attorney. I believe, in all fairness, 93 Highwood, if you read the last correspondence she sent, she gave me the impression that she might be in the mood to hire an attorney should we proceed with the designation.
All right.
Any comments about trees?
So,
I'll start with the trees. The
Are
comments
you
of
talking about trees, or you want to talk about the historic?
Trees.
Oh,
trees. The comment about trees, it does not affect at all the existing owners of the property. It's only basically for a newly developed property. It's the existing owners of the existing properties, they follow the same rules. The issue over here is, it's one thing that was added, which is basically the fact, it's a clarification, the fact that the tennis court of the swimming pool are not part of the house, they are separate entities, so that clarification is just basically to understand the ordinance basically
Well,
are not.
the planning board decided not to make a recommendation for or against your ordinance. They want clarification.
On this one.
Yeah, they don't seem to understand why there's an issue about cutting a tree down if you want to expand your house, but there's not an issue if you want to build a tennis court or a swimming pool.
The other way, I guess.
What?
There's no problem if you're expanding your house, you're an owner.
Oh, that's right, you're right.
Yeah.
But if you want to put in a pool or a tennis court,
Yeah.
you have to mitigate.
You have to mitigate, that's simple,
Take it
that's
easy.
not a cow.
But
it's a
even
new-
No, it's...
That's not what it's saying
That's
here.
wrong.
So-
You've got it wrong.
No, no,
Can I
that's
say,
what-
no,
Sure.
I just
Yeah,
say
please.
something here. So the planning board has two issues. The first issue is very simple. They are confused about what is different with the new ordinance proposed and the existing ordinance. So they need to see something in writing that says, here are these following 6 things, and here's how they're changing.
Alright.
Because it's not clear to the planning board what we're actually changing, okay? And then the second issue is, there's confusion over why is a tennis court and a swimming pool excluded as a home improvement? What's the logic behind that?
Yeah.
In other words, okay, so I can take as many trees down as I want, as long as I build an Olympic-sized pool, but
It's
if I
the
put a
other way.
garage in,
It's
I
the other
can't.
one. So
So we need clarification.
Let's ask
That's not
Bill.
correct.
Let Bill
A
speak.
home improvement, if it's, a home improvement is exempt from mitigation. So by saying that for the purposes of this section, tennis courts and swimming pools are not considered home improvements, that means you have to mitigate for a tennis court or a swimming pool, but not for a home improvement.
So let's go back to the basic premises of the changes, and we're gonna ask Bill to make it clear in a letter.
Right.
Basically, if you own a home and you do improvements, the existing rule, which are regarding the mitigations, if you have a tree, are not changed at all. Basically, there is no change, 0. Whatever used to be, stays. If you are a developer, you take a new lot, and you start cutting trees because you want to put a home, then you have to mitigate for the home and for the trees. You basically have virgin land, then you have to mitigate for that.
Okay, that all makes sense. All I'm saying is, we need to send a letter to the planning board
Exactly.
writing explaining that.
So wait a minute, I have a question in hearing this.
Yeah.
So I'm a homeowner and I decide I'm going to put a tennis court and a pool.
Yeah.
Am I exempt?
No.
No.
But I'm not a
They were never.
developer. My house already stands.
Well,
Yeah.
you can ask Max why.
Okay. Even today,
I just read it.
if you basically put a swimming pool or you put a tennis court,
That's what it says.
if you cut the streets, you have to mitigate. That's basically
So
the
that exists.
exists today. This was just specifically making people understand nothing was changed for the existing homeowners. What we wanted to do is that if you look at 57 Knickerbocker or 50, they cut all the trees and they have 0 mitigation practically because they
That's not true.
houses.
They have plenty of mitigation.
No, they have minimum mitigation because the houses and their extensions have basically no requirements for mitigation. We don't want that to happen again. Footprints of the house, we want to be able to mitigate.
No, I'm not saying he's right, I'm saying that's written correctly.
I'm not saying this, you didn't understand it. But what he's saying is incorrect. I mean, there is a significant amount of mitigation.
Only
fact,
in the
what-
area of the street,
Right.
which is basically, they don't have to mitigate for any of the home sites of the 10 homes, they don't have to mitigate.
That's correct.
So now we want to make sure that not only for the street, but also for the homes,
Right,
they have to
right.
mitigate.
Right. Now, what
So
is
that
probably
what
needs
is
to
the
be
issue with the swimming pools and the tennis court?
I don't think there's any issue. I wrote it, I thought, very clearly. Home improvements.
Right.
All right, because I modified the definition of existing residences. Existing residence means a residential dwelling for which a certificate of occupancy has been previously issued. That means an existing home that is,
Right.
that can be occupied. A home improvement means any expansion or addition to an existing residence. Okay, and then it goes, then it describes some other things, but it says, but doesn't include swimming pool or tennis court.
So today.
So a newly constructed swimming pool or tennis court, that's
Yes,
what you're
correct.
saying?
Of course.
Yeah,
Because-
okay.
So
Yeah.
today, before this ordinance is passed,
Right.
if Shama wanted to put a tennis court or a swimming pool in her backyard, she would have to mitigate
Yes.
any trees coming down.
Right now?
Yes, right now.
Yes.
I think so, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And
she
after
has
this
to.
ordinance is
I
passed,
still
Yeah.
have
She
to.
still has to.
she still has to. So
Yes.
so there's
The
no.
difference is
Right.
not to the homeowner then.
Yeah, this one was just
The
a
benefit,
clarification.
there's a benefit that runs to a homeowner here.
What is the
For-
difference, what, if any, differences for building a swimming pool or a home, or a tennis court,
The reason-
for anybody?
The reason I had to put that in is because we don't want that to be within the definition of home improvement, otherwise it would be exempt. And what I was told is we don't want to exempt new tennis courts or swimming pools from the mitigation requirement.
But they're
Because
not,
right-
they're not
so-
exempt now.
So if I put
Yes,
in...
they are.
That's correct.
They're
But-
not,
They're not
we
exempt now.
just want to make sure that people
I'm keeping
understand
it
it.
not exempt.
So if I put an addition on my house today, put in a new living room,
Yeah.
whatever, I don't have to mitigate.
No, you
Correct.
don't.
But if I put a pool in, I have to mitigate.
Yes.
Yes.
Because
Okay,
it's
and
not
that's
part of the house.
Okay, so in that plain, simple English, that needs to be written to the planning board.
So my recommendation would be, we go ahead and move the 1717 forward, and we table 1718 until you have a recommendation from the planning board?
Yes.
Okay?
See, I don't think the planning board didn't understand it. They
I was
said,
there, the
they
planning board didn't
clearly did
understand.
not
they said, we want to
understand.
know the reason for it. It says,
Well, that's 'cause
the
we
board
didn't
would like to know the
understand.
reasoning for its, okay.
Well, you either want a recommendation from them, or you don't need one. If you don't need one, then we can vote on it tonight.
No, we don't need one. We did it specifically. The only reason we
Then why would
basically...
you send it to them if you don't need
I'll
it?
tell you in a second. The
Don't
only
require
reason
it.
that we send it to them, to make sure that is not in any type of way opposed to any type of resolutions they have. So they make sure that it's not something that is contradictory between what we're trying to do or not. We don't need any approval from the planning board. They just have to say, okay, I don't see a contradiction with the existing plan, or I don't see a contradiction with our master plans.
Huh?
I thought you had the
it's not the
order.
But I would say,
Okay,
Put in the book.
but just to correct that,
Yeah.
we do that because that's what the law requires.
Yeah.
But yes, it's correct that even if they say it's not consistent with the master plan, they don't recommend it, the council has the right to pass it anyway, but they have to say their reasons.
Okay.
but if they are confused, then likely other people would get confused, so better to
Right.
clarify it now before
We
we
can
proceed with
clarify,
it.
no problem. We
Yeah.
should can write a letter, no problem. So for everybody to understand, we just basically want
Mark?
a new construction that is built.
Thank you.
When you cut all the streets for new construction, to mitigate.
So once
Okay.
again, do we wait for a recommendation from the planning board, or do we vote on it without a recommendation from the planning board?
Okay.
I think the recommendation is advisable.
If you want to,
Yeah,
I
do the
think
clar-
let's do the.
we'll do the
process.
clarification.
Stick with the
and-
same
I
plan.
believe,
Yeah.
I
Let's
believe
do it
that
with the-
Mark
yeah.
and I are prepared to discuss this better now with the planning board.
Yep.
I don't think there'll be as much confusion.
Yeah.
But when I answer this, they are saying they wanted to know the reasoning of the mayor and council for having that in there.
Okay, because basically we having the problem with trees being destroyed by new construction without mitigation.
I mean, they're asking specifically about the reasoning
And that's
for
the reason.
That's the
still
reason.
requiring mitigation for swimming pools and tennis courts.
Oh, there's still, that's
Right.
what used to be. It's nothing new.
You want to keep that the
Yeah.
same.
Keep exactly the same. We don't change that.
Mark, you comfortable with that, right?
I'm comfortable with that. The planning board didn't appreciate the fact that they were confused because the way they read it, they thought pools and tennis courts were exempt from mitigation. That's how they read it, so it
No.
needs to be explained.
It's the other
It's
way
the other way around.
That's fine.
They
So
were
let's
never
explain that.
exempt, and now they very clearly specify they were never exempt.
Home improvements are exempt, but swimming pools and tennis courts aren't considered home improvements for the purposes of this.
So let's explain that in the memo, then they'll understand it better.
Okay, next one to be considered is we have a letter from the Recreation Committee, okay, basically advocating for a new turf field. We do have with us our Recreation Director, and we do have, did I see our Assistant Recreation Director here also? Yes. Anybody from your committee here as well? No, okay. With the council's permission, I'd like to let our director or our assistant director who wants to speak just say a few words.
Just 1 second before, who's the recreation committee? When I see a letter, recreation committee, who is?
So at the last, on the liaison to the
Yeah.
Recreation Committee, we had a meeting October 16th. We talked about a whole host of things, which I'll do I'll talk about my committee report. But one of the issues is, I told the Recreation Committee that we're debating the whole municipal turf issue, and that if they feel strongly about the situation with the municipal turf, that they should write a letter to the mayor and council to explain their position, and then come here to talk to us about it.
So this was written by the recreation committee, not by our recreation director or,
Well, it's signed by the Recreation Committee.
okay.
It's on behalf.
So stand up and come and talk, please.
All right. So, as everybody knows, our turf field longevity is 8 to 10 years. We're actually going on 14 years on our turf field. I think it's important for this community that it is an entity for our sports complex and for our borough complex. What's most important and why we're here is because there were questions about the turf field. It is important and is imperative that we get this field done by next year. It is most importantly a safety issue, and we do want something that's going to uphold safety for the children in the community. And I know there are questions, so.
Well, I don't know that there are any questions that you could answer. I think, having sat at this table and through a number of discussions about it, I think we all are in agreement that the turf field needs to be replaced. It is our goal to have it replaced during the month of August, so that come September and the fall sports season is upon us, we will have a new field. So I hopefully, that's where we're headed.
All right, the question that we had, again, is what they discussed with you, is a question about the safety of the
Hold on,
carbon
Max,
field.
Max, please don't say we.
Yes, we.
No, don't say we, please.
Yes, I can say.
Well, it's not we.
Yes, it
Who's
is.
we?
Shama and I, we all have issues about
Is he speaking for you, Shama?
Oh, yes, I have concerns about the material on the field.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's because that's something we've discussed.
I will pass out for the next meeting some studies that have been done. The only studies that we get are pretty much, I would say, not done by the manufacturers, but done on behalf of the manufacturers, because because there are no other studies. That's the problem. And we've been through this time and time again, and it is what it is. I mean, our kids have been using this field for 14 years.
No, I do not argue on that point, Mayor. We went to look at the field, at the Geisinger field, as compared to Mark, Max and I, as compared to this field, and clearly there is a difference. But who was the gentleman we met there who told us about there was
He was the...
somebody there.
He's one of the athletic directors at the high school.
And he recommended we look into cork fields,
Cork
fields
yeah,
also,
which is basically less.
which is better
Controversial.
Well, you're basically saying that the field over there, which is 12 years newer, is a better field than what
No.
that's 14 years old.
We're not saying
Well,
that. We're saying for the material.
That's
of
not
the
a
field.
cork field either.
No,
Yeah,
but
no, that's not.
you
What we are
understand
saying that cork fields should also be looked into, because that's less.
controversial. That's very
Controversial, that's
Can I
controversial.
Yeah.
jump in for a second?
Yeah.
I think the discussion about cork fields is 100% valid, but I think we should go back to your question and tell us your view, because you live and breathe on that field,
Yeah.
about what are the safety issues, because we don't play on that field. You do.
Yeah.
So if I could, I don't know how much everybody knows about turf fields. underneath it's what it's called a crumb rubber. So basically they're pellets of rubber. And for those of you who have children, have you ever gone home and emptied a shoe with that crumb rubber? Basically, it's harmless. It's not hazardous when it's in the ground. There are things made of crumb rubber, such as toys. Gloves, surgical gloves are made of crumb rubber, and also chewing gum. So these are all things that we either ingest or we use in surgical fields. So basically that's what it's made of. Now what's happening is it's compacted down to nothing. So basically it's a concrete surface. Now what's happening is these crumb rubber pellets are basically all over. So basically, not that they're hazardous at all, but children are ingesting them, or maybe pets that are walking around. I know some of you have pets. I've met your pet, Max. I mean, imagine if they're now ingesting these things that are coming from the
I'm
field.
very concerned about that, very much so.
Right. So
That's why
now,
we're trying to look at the other ones.
yeah. So now what you're talking about is cork. Now with me being a recreation director, I do take these classes and I felt all the materials. Cork is organic. Now, unfortunately and unfortunately, it's less durable, so it will not last longer. And
Will it
that's just
cost
the
less?
difference. It doesn't actually cost more.
Yeah, we were told that practically they're the same price. Look, we want to
It's
replace,
more-
we want to
anything
replace it,
organic.
but we want to make sure that we replace it
Okay.
with really what
safe-
is
One of
best.
our, one of
safe
our goals,
material.
well,
Yeah.
nobody here is advocating a field that's not safe.
No, of course
Okay,
not.
we also, we've agreed, I think, in principle, that we need to replace this field in August.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can talk about this till the cows come home. There are no studies that show that this field is not safe, and your dog shouldn't be walking on the field anyway. It's not.
My dog never works on
Okay,
it.
Well,
then
what
he's not
happens
going to
is-
ingest the pellets.
The crumb rubber is
I'm afraid
actually
that I'm
coming
gonna do
onto the parking lot, and the dogs are walking in the area, and we've seen what's happening.
Yeah.
So, and that's what we live and breathe. I go home and I empty my shoes, and that's what I have. And like I said, it is used in the surgical field and things like that. It's not something that's hazardous. And at this point, what's happening is we can't even groom the field. You can actually groom a turf field to where it has life again. We're just past that life. And this is the telltale sign that it's time.
But
14
Jamie,
years is a long time.
like I said, I think it's our goal to replace the field over the course of the summer, so that we have a new field, and everybody here wants to have a field that's as safe as possible. I just, if anybody's walked on both the municipal field and Geisinger Field, you're going to see the
Sure.
difference.
Oh, absolutely, we saw that.
So hopefully, our field will be even better than Geisinger, because it'll be 2 or 3 years newer. And these fields are all, the products that they're using are continually being upgraded. Plus, we had a cost estimate for an increase in price to put us another layer. The only purpose of that layer is safety. So we're making this field as safe as possible. And keep in mind, prior to this, the field we had was not safe. It was overused, and it was not, we're getting 3 and 4 times as much use out of this field than we ever got out of the old field. So we are making progress from just about every direction. So thank you for your
appreciate your time.
advocating
Thank you.
for your kids.
I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you so much.
The administrator, and I will be happy to, Jewel, we have a report that we got not that long ago, right? We can share with the members of the council.
Oh, yeah,
All right, it'll go out tomorrow.
okay.
Administrator's report.
We really just have a few updates. Let's see. The new DPW building, happy to report that the group is actually moving into the building, which began yesterday.
We're going to do a ribbon cutting?
We should, definitely. But first, we just want to make sure that everybody's in, that all of the networks are connected, and that the phones are working. That's the first.
Yeah, Bob
priority.
gave me, if I can interrupt, Bob gave me a tour of it last week. We walked through.
Gorgeous.
It looks good. Looks good.
Jewel, we never had a presentation. Why was it so late by 6 months? Would you please give us a presentation next time, why it took 6 months longer, so we understand what
Oh,
happened?
I think you could tell us now, right?
I can tell you
I
right
don't need,
now.
I know what you mean by presentation. but
Whatever, you know.
We
Maybe.
had that question answered before, but
Yeah.
answer it again.
We have acknowledged that based on the original time frame, that the first 3-month delay was actually a result of the borough having to respond to the DEP requirements for the UST, the underground storage tank removal. Okay, so that basically was the first 3 months.
So let me understand, because we had to answer to the underground removal of the tank, we had to stop the construction of the building?
The construction hadn't started. We delayed the startup for 3 months
Okay, so the
because we could
starting of
not,
the- okay.
we couldn't move the soil until the
okay.
mitigation,
All right,
remediation was in process. Then throughout the course of the project, once we got going, it wasn't like one lengthy delay. It was a series of short delays, which basically aggregated in terms of an additional 3 to 4 month delay on top of the first portion. And that was basically to dealing with the fact that we had a contractor that created some problems for us, and we had to work with them and to work with their project manager to keep the project as on track as possible so that those delays did not become any more extensive and that we could get the building completed, which was our main objective. We could have come down on them much harder, but we did not want to create a situation where we either got into litigation or where construction stopped.
Okay.
Construction never stopped.
Okay, thank
It
you.
was worth the 3
Not for a
months.
long time.
Okay, so we're moving in. Just wanted to apprise you that the budget process has started. We've already been in the process of planning, but now we're getting into the aggressive mode where we will be giving the department heads their marching orders with respect to getting the process underway and submitting their requests. We just wanted to clarify for you that this is not going to be 100% electronic in our first year of utilizing Edmunds. We're still going to be doing troubleshooting on that particular module. Susan will be taking the lead in inputting the information, but we'll be monitoring it and creating our workflows. Because not only do we want to be able to create the budget within the computer system, but we also want the department heads to become better versed in terms of utilizing the reporting and the expenditure monitoring features that we now have. 2018 project budgets, just to, I basically just want to recap the things that we've been talking about the past few months. The field, we know about the parking lot. Those are the two major projects that we've been talking about, but we'll also be following up on everything else that has been discussed with regard to the dog park, the new signage for certain buildings and facilities, the lighted pedestrian crossing signs, the Froggy Park baby swings, the improvements to the greenhouse at Davis Johnson Park. All of these things are having the additional preparation work, getting cost estimates for inclusion in the 2018 budget.
So, because you brought this up, June, I just got from Assemblyman Johnson the prices for the lightning signs that they have in Englewood. And it's anywhere between $1,500 to $1,700 per sign, depending upon how many LEDs or so they are. They use the $1,500 on the 8 LEDs, and the one the stops we had like 12 LEDs that goes up to $1,700. So just so you have an idea of how much another town pays for that. So we do the price. The issue with Froggy Park was the issue of shade for the city. So wouldn't it be easier, we discussed about putting those trees back, planting those trees so we have some shade back for the kids, rather than spending new money. We were supposed to have that, the fall is supposed to be the time that we are planting the trees, and that would go further, just basically in mitigating some of these issues.
The issue was actually twofold. The information that we actually received, the written information, was about the number of swings.
No, it was about the shade,
No,
swings
it
in the
was-
shade.
It was about the number of baby swings. Yeah, it was both.
All right, but I'm saying,
And we pointed out, because we reported on this a couple of weeks ago, we had asked the manufacturer to look at where they could be configured. Yes, the issue was also shade, but we can't deal with the location of trees until we first deal with the position of additional swings.
okay. And we also need to deal with the location of the shade of trees in Holiday Park, which were cut, which were supposed to be replanted. Okay, sorry.
No problem. And events, and we do have some reports that came in today. I'll make sure that those go to you tomorrow, especially since our next meeting is a few weeks away. So you'll also be getting the engineering report and the monthly police report, in addition to the information regarding, the updated information regarding turf fields.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have also a report over here of the building department fees and so on, and you have reviewed those fees. Are they going up? Do we have an estimate on, based on existing, how much of the extra revenue is going to create or so? Do we know anything like that?
When you say extra revenue,
Yeah, the fees are going up next year for the construction, whatever.
the fees are only going up for two specific types of activities, and both of them really relate to fire. The portions of the fees that support the fire code. So if you recall, we had to really drastically cut back on the changes that we wanted to make, because we first have to have a set of audited statements
Yeah.
done based on this year's budget.
So, but I'm saying, do you have some projection on how much revenue they're going to bring in and how much extra, if any?
You're asking for what the increase in
What the
revenue?
increase-
Exactly. What, based on the existing one, what are we looking at as a projection of revenue? Because,
Usually, we don't put that in the budget, because we use that, you know, in case.
It goes into budget. This is part of the revenue.
No, when
It's a line item.
there
It's a
are
line item?
projections, yeah, but there are projections made, and we don't necessarily figure to the penny.
I'm not, it's
Any
basically.
increases.
Yeah, no, they're going to go in the budget anyhow.
The increases will be taken into account the following year when you see how much came in. Then you don't budget for money that you think is going to come in. You budget for money that came in last year.
We're always a year
No.
and a half
So
behind.
can I ask the question a different way?
Yeah.
Do you have a guess or an estimate of the fire fees are going up by what percent, 10%, 50%?
No, it's not even that much. It's, I have to get the exact amount for you, but I understand what
Yeah,
you're
okay,
saying.
good. Thanks.
But you're both right, that's the thing. We can estimate
Yeah.
the additional revenue, but you can't count it.
No,
No, of course
absolutely.
not.
We don't
And
even
that's-
worry about
that's
that.
all.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay.
So,
One of the things we don't worry about. Okay, move on to correspondence. The first is an invitation from our auditor for, they have an event down in Atlantic City, and we attended
You're
it last
saying
year.
yes,
And
Mayor?
I will personally urge I think it was very,
It was a
very
great
very nice.
event.
So,
Absolutely.
anybody have a problem with doing that?
No, not me at
Max,
least.
you got a problem with it?
No, none of the whatsoever.
Okay, next is a letter from Mr. Homer, I believe it, I'm assuming AR, maybe it's Mr. or Miss Homer, about dredging Fister's Pond. Anybody want to comment on that letter, so that we can have our clerk craft a response?
Yes, Mayor, I think the writer makes a good case. This 620, I thought it was 661.
Yeah.
661.
661.
Yeah, the 661, I know that when we first brought it up, I also voted for it, but I've been having serious worries about it. My fear is if the money is there earmarked, it will get spent. I want somehow that
Well, this is what the council moved forward.
I know,
You know,
I
and
know.
Max had some concerns about it, as did I. I felt that we should just approve the first item.
Exactly.
And
Mayor,
see, you
I'm-
know,
I'm really having
after that,
serious second
I
thoughts
don't,
here.
I don't believe that this is a significant amount of money, whether you're for or against it.
Yeah.
I'm
It's
very
a
concerned
huge
about-
amount of money.
It's not that I don't support improving the
We
pond, but I
we
think
all support the
let's-
general, but
Yeah.
it's
you know,
too much money.
Let's just do the first step,
Exactly.
and then we'll.
Please.
Yeah, and then we'll look at the second step,
And
understanding.
just approve the money of the, it's the approval of the money that is really making me
Yeah.
nervous now.
Okay, our CFO,
Yeah, when you write an ordinance like that and tonight it's up for adoption, the whole amount of the 661 has to be put into capital. If you don't use the whole amount, it can go back into open space.
No,
So
but
can I-
my point is a different one. My point is, if it's approved and it's in capital, and there's a line item says that there's this money for the pond, somewhere down the road, it'll get
Well,
used
no,
for
it
the pond.
only
I'm
gets
just
spent if
Hold
you
on.
very
if you
Dan and then Mark.
authorize it.
Dan,
Well,
We
only
discussed
gets
this last
spent.
meeting. There's a secondary safety step where we approve every single step of the way of the
There
project,
is.
entire project.
It's the same way we come to you, even when you approve projects in the capital budget, as you recall, we still have to come to you to implement and expend.
Yeah.
And that's why this will be run through the capital budget. That's what's required from an accounting requirement.
Shalmi, think of it this way.
No, just my question before, to your comment, then why approve, if you still have to come back, we can approve the second amount later.
it's not there though.
It's not there.
Because it's a project, and it's a holistic project, and you don't have a viable project if each step of the plan has to be subjected to a separate ordinance
Got it.
and public hearing.
But then here's the thing, then are we really willing to spend 661,000 on this bond?
Well, that's what.
That
So-
is
so
really starting to bother
You're
me.
getting right to the heart of the decision here, because this is what we decided to do, to invest the 661,000 in repairing this pond. So you can't think of this in terms of, well, let's spend 50,000, if we're happy with that, maybe we'll spend the rest. Because if you're not willing to do the whole project, and every penny you've wasted prior to completion, every amount of dollar you've spent will have been wasted. You know what the analogy is? It would be like saying, let's build a new DPW building, but we're only going to authorize the expenditure of the foundation, and then we'll see what happens 6 months from now.
Okay, then why don't we make a sort of a policy decision that we will not spend this kind of money on the pond? I know there was a dike that was talked about. Let's just fix it with the dike, which was what, 60,000, Mayor, if I'm not
But
mistaken?
why, so this
100,000?
is the whole question. Why would we do that?
Why would we spend $661,000 on a man-made pond?
So the
I cannot justify
Right,
that
so-
to myself
So that's
or anybody.
a policy decision, if
Yeah.
you want the pond to disappear.
That's fine, if it goes back to nature, it's in the
Well,
nature
that's,
center.
okay, so that's a separate, that's a new decision
No, but I
then.
just cannot, I guess cannot bring myself to accept spending 61,000 on a pond. That's the way I'm.
And I think that
But
what
keep in
Peter was
mind that
saying
some
and
of
what
the
Shama's saying,
estimates
was
were as
saying,
much as 3
let's go
million.
through the first phase.
Right.
And then they would be able to look at the second phase and say, how can we save the maximum amount of money? And then they come to us and,
I think before we say, let's do the first phase, I think we need to bring this back and review it again.
Yes, please, Mayor.
I hate to do
Yeah.
this
Yes,
because
please, Mayor.
yeah.
You-
we
you
can't seem to make a decision.
we
Every time we
can't
make
do
a
this
decision,
budget
the following
piecemeal.
week we
No,
decide
but
we have to
let's-
review the decision again.
Let's
But
review this.
This is a lot of money, even though it's open space money.
But still it's money.
I understand that. So I would suggest that we put this back on. Before I say let's spend $50,000, let's review what that $50,000 is for, because like Mark says, I don't want to build a foundation for a building and then decide not to build the building.
Yeah.
If this is a foundation, that's fine. If this is something that will improve the pond but not dredge it, well, then maybe we consider doing it. I believe the dike has some impact other than what the dredging will do. So why don't we?
We will raise the level by at least a
Why
foot.
don't we review?
So we need to kind of like vote on this, unfortunately, to decide whether to table this or take it off the
Well,
agenda.
this is correspondence. We
Yeah,
don't vote-
but it's
we
on
don't-
the-
We
it's
don't
on
vote
the-
on correspondence.
No,
What-
but
what-
it's
what
on the
we-
agenda.
what we-
But this
no,
has
it's
got,
not on the- What's on the agenda is this letter.
No.
No, there is a vote on the
There's a
agenda.
vote.
Okay.
There is a vote on the agenda
For
in the, for adoption. So
Okay.
we have to table that one.
Yeah,
Well, we-
that-
Yeah, when we get there, we can
When we
table
get
it.
there,
you
we'll
get
have an
there-
argument.
All right, good. Let's move on.
But as far as responding to this letter, I think we should just say that we're taking it under consideration and
Yeah.
thank him for his thoughts.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
That makes sense.
Just as a note, this is the third year we've done this. Circling back to the same question. Just
Doesn't
as
matter.
a
We never
note,
had a solution. We
No.
never had a
this
proposal.
was the solution.
No,
No,
we
no,
never
no,
had
no,
a proposal. This is the
4
first
years in the
time.
making, I'm sorry. 4
It's
years
better
in the
to
making.
spend time and think
Let's-
about
we'll
it than
talk
spend
about it
that
one more
kind of
time
money.
tonight.
Yeah, it won't hurt.
Okay.
Just
Next one
noting
is-
it.
The next item is a request for 2 pods. Anybody have a problem with this?
No.
Is it
Okay.
the same thing that we had before?
Yes, but he gave us wrong information.
Yeah? Okay.
He's
changing the dates.
He's changing the dates.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that one.
This is for 2 pods, though. Have we ever approved
No,
2 pods before?
I don't remember.
Nope.
I would suggest
For sleeping.
that we just check with the zoning official. The zoning official rejects this permit because you can't have pods in the front of the house, okay? I would suggest that we approve 1 pod with the caveat that if the zoning official has no problem with the second pod, we let them have the second pod. Let's just let him review the second pod, because, you know, when
If
you're
the
doing...
zoning official cannot approve the second bite, he will have a problem.
No,
No pods in
we're
front.
approving it subject to his review of it, because he can't approve it because it's against the ordinance to put
But
it
we
there.
can let him.
We can approve it, but, you know, one of the reasons we don't let people put a pod in the front yard is because it impacts the neighbors. They're living next to a pod in the front yard. So we're giving him permission because he can't put it anywhere else. But now 2 pods, I feel guilty, because normally I would have gone to Bob Burns and asked him about the second pod. I would have gone past the house, which I didn't do.
So we're
So-
kind of talking about then single pods, but for twice as long.
I'm sorry.
What?
So if he needs 2 pods, right.
He's saying
He's
they
gonna
will
have
be
it on
delivered
2 pods
on
on
the
the
2nd
spot.
and picked up on the 6th of November.
right, so if he has enough stuff to fill 2 pods, he still needs to get a second pod
Well, it's
there.
only for 4 days.
Right, but he'll
so-
need another 4 days if we only allow 1 at
Yeah,
a
so
time.
why don't we
Yeah.
just
So what's
say,
the-
Yeah, so
okay,
what's the
subject to
difference?
Bob Burns' review? That's all.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're right, then there'll be pods there for
There'll be
8
pods
days
there
versus
twice
for
as long.
4 days.
So subject to Bob Burns' review.
Let him have his 2
Okay.
pods.
It's 4 days. He wants to know.
Any questions on the resolutions?
On the ones that we have here.
Okay, so on the public hearings, which is the one we're gonna pull off? We're gonna pull off trees, 1718,
Yes.
Trees.
Trees.
and we're gonna pull off 1719, which is the 661.
661.
Right.
And I think everything else is okay.
So the 661, the pond we're gonna talk about, whereas the trees, we're just removing it.
Removing till.
Well,
we
yeah,
get-
we're not gonna pull, we'll separate, yeah, we'll
separating
talk
it out,
about.
right.
We'll talk, well, we talk
They're all
each one
separate.
individually anyway.
They do
Right,
all
okay.
individual.
So wait, we're removing 1718 for future consideration, right?
Correct.
Correct.
And then 1719 is...
No, we're just gonna,
We're just gonna have a
we're gonna
lively
discuss it, most
conversation.
likely table it, so that can be left there.
Oh, we don't need to pull it then?
No,
Okay.
we're gonna
We'll table.
pull it or table, it's the same thing, actually.
Yeah.
Then the only other thing, for the good of the order, max donation to the senior
Yes.
center correspondence. Is this about the donation that was made, or we want to send a thank you to?
Yeah, we
to
were
Janet
at
Sharma.
the, Shama and I, we were at the senior
Board
center board meeting, and they were very thankful for this donation. They will rebuild the room, they make a library, they're gonna have it, and they said it's so much worthwhile sending a thank you letter. And I think that
I
should be.
think that's what should come
So
from
you
mayor
want,
and council.
all right, so
Yeah.
would you get the information to Lisette? And
She has it.
You have it?
She
All
has
right.
it already.
Anybody have a problem with this? I think it's a great idea.
No, it's fine.
Okay. Under old business, shared housing.
Okay, shared housing and STAR program. We need to discuss a bit before. There is a letter over here, and I want to thank Jeff Grossman for helping and putting together this letter. We need to understand,
What letter is that, Nick?
it's in your
In the package.
package that you have.
It's not a
here.
letter, it's like a
Under
Yeah.
old business?
memo.
Yeah, and under STAR program. So the STAR program is a program whereby people of a certain age and a certain income, they get a share of their school taxes paid by the state. And that has a very positive effect on the people that have lower income and a certain age, because they can then lighten their taxes and they can age in place.
Max, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
You said something that I'm not sure of. He stated that in the STAR program, certain seniors with eligible seniors pay less school tax, but he said that the state picks up that cost. Is that true, or is it? I'm not confident that the state picks up that cost.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
and
it's
the
either the state or the rest of the taxpayers pick it up.
Well, it has to be paid for, so if you're going to get money back under that program, it has to come from, money to pay for things has to come from somewhere.
It comes from the
Well,
state.
Are you
It doesn't get
saying-
taken away from, the school budget, though.
It's switching from a property tax-based system to an income tax-based system for that portion, right? Because the refund from the state would come from money the state raises by income
No, but
taxes.
No, but-
I'm an eligible senior, so let's say that I get a $5,000 reduction in my
Yeah.
property tax. Does that mean I pay $5,000 less?
Yes.
Or I get reimbursed
No,
$5,000?
no, you
No,
pay-
no, you pay your taxes, but you apply for the, under the
Rebate.
program, and you get money back from the state, it comes from the general fund.
So the state refunds the money
Yeah.
to the taxpayer?
Right.
So the whole idea is that the state, now, it helps the seniors, and it helps usually much more the communities that have a lot of seniors that have lower income. So a community like Englewood will have a much more refunds coming from the state, rather than a community like Tenafly that might have 5, 6, 10, 20 people. And the way to do that is coming from the state tax pool. So some kind of communities have a more advantageous status versus otherwise. The reason I'm saying that is for us to understand that the overall pool of money is going to come still from any place, and it might be a shift of income from the state to the lower income communities rather than to the higher income communities.
Well, what's your goal here? This
So
is
I'm
not a
gonna get-
program that we can instigate.
No,
It's a
no, but
state
the
program.
idea is to write to the letter basically here is a letter basically is asking the
The state.
the state to create a program like that.
So you want to send this letter to?
No, I said I want to discuss with the council if we want to do that, considering the fact that there is this issue about who would benefit the most and how much would Tenafly benefit or not. First, as a council basically decision, and then if the council agrees, then we can look at the letter, make sure that it's absolutely correct, and send it.
So
Have you weighed in your mind the potential for actually getting the state to do this?
Zero. It doesn't matter. I have made a commitment. I made a
How much time are we
commitment.
going to spend on this?
Yeah, I made a commitment to the senior people, senior citizens, that I will bring it up and I always do that.
Well, it's an admirable goal.
it's
It's just
worth
talking about
advocating for.
realistic
Yeah.
situation.
We're basically suggesting, we put together a resolution suggesting that the state.
It's a letter. It's a letter.
Okay.
Just to the statement. And this is the letter, was written by Jeff. It was very helpful. And, you know, I wanted to bring, before we send the letter, I want everybody
But
to understand.
Who in the state are we sending it to? The governor?
Okay.
To the, our state reps?
Well, the truth is, we'll send it to everybody.
Okay.
Who cares? We'll send it to
Well,
everybody.
it costs 44 cents a stamp.
Yeah,
How about,
I'll
can I
pay for
make
that.
a compromise suggestion?
Yeah, please.
It goes to our, our state senator, and our two
State
state assembly
assembly
people,
people.
and the governor, and then we go from
And
there.
we send it
Yeah.
after
This way we only
November,
have to
after
buy-
November 7th.
Yeah, 4 stamps.
4 stamps. All right.
Peter's point.
But the idea is you have to understand that if something like that gets implemented, chances are very, very low. There's going to be a shift of our income going to the lower income
Well,
communities.
you're
That's a whole
correct.
separate.
Yeah.
That's
You're
separate.
correct. This would put a burden on the state.
Yes.
And, it's questionable as to whether the state can afford it anyway because
Yeah.
they're going bankrupt. But the burden would be, like you're saying, more money would go back to a town like Englewood
Exactly.
or Hudson County
Yeah.
than would come to us.
Exactly.
So at the same time, we're all paying the money to the state that's, in effect, probably the impact would be a negative one on Tenafly.
Overall.
But a positive one on some of our
Oh,
seniors.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
basically, so that we totally understand this, the cost of this program is being put on people that are not getting the benefit.
Exactly. And that's why I want to make sure that everybody understands that if we send a letter, that if ever, in God's whatever happens, that's the implication. So now that we all understand, if we want, we'll send a letter and be done.
We have the senior freeze program though, which works the same way as the STAR program in New York.
Call you Joe.
But I mean, if you meet the eligibility requirements, the state sends
I mean,
you
the real problem here in Tenafly is not very many of our seniors meet the eligibility requirements. And that's fortunate because, the eligibility requirements are quite low. We don't have, but what we really need in Tenafly and throughout the state is something that will benefit a higher percentage of the seniors.
Yeah.
It'd be very difficult to live in Tenafly with an income that's within range of this program.
Yeah.
We have a lot of seniors that live in this town that are struggling, but their income is still above. This program wouldn't really help them. But, and once again, I think Max is very realistic when he says the possibility of this being implemented, taking into account the finances of our state right now, is probably close to zero.
Yeah.
If you want to do this, we can have our clerk write a letter based on what Jeff Grossman put together for us, and send it out to Loretta and Gordon and Valerie and the new governor. We're going to hold off on these letters until we
after
know
the
who the new
election.
governor is. And I'm sure,
That means after December 31st, when they're sworn in, whoever the new governor may be.
that's true.
Is it, are we going to have...
We don't wanna overwhelm him before he takes a seat.
A business on the public.
No, we can bring it.
Okay.
All right, if that's it, I'd like to entertain a motion to close the work session.
No, there are a few things that
There's
I
nothing else on
don't...
the agenda.
For the good of the order, I guess, there are a few things over here.
Good of the order was, one was the,
Oh,
Or new business.
no, what else?
Okay.
there's no new business?
New businesses in the public meeting.
In a public meeting, so then, for the good of the order, basically, we have received a letter from Susan Van Posnack about an issue, and we'd like to put it on the agenda for the next meeting regarding the Nature Center, Tenafly Nature Center.
This is going to be public.
Okay.
Well, it's not a letter. You received an email and you're asking the borough clerk to put it on the agenda for the next
Yes,
meeting.
exactly.
Email is now a letter mail.
It's the
Nobody
same,
sends letters
okay.
anymore.
Okay, unless there's anything else, I'll entertain a motion to close the work session.
So moved.
I'm begging you. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
We're going there?
no, we're gonna stay here. Do we need a break? So,
couple
we're
of
moving,
minutes.
we've got momentum.
Right.
Let's go right forward. So we're gonna open our public meeting now. In compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, The notice requirements have been satisfied. The meeting dates for the year are confirmed at the annual meeting, are posted on the public bulletin board in the lobby of the municipal center, and published in the record within the first 10 days of the new year.
Good.
Salute to the flag.
You have the patience of Job.
Yeah. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayter?
Here.
Councilmember Park?
Here.
Councilmember Stefanowitz?
Here.
Councilmember Zito?
Here.
Mayor Russell?
Here. I'll entertain a motion to approve the following sets of minutes: September 26th, the work session, and September 26th, the regular meeting. Please.
So moved.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Revisions to the agenda?
Well, I'm going to say it as a revision, but Ordinance 1718, I know, is going to be not considered tonight, so I don't know if you want to address it then. And I think 1719 also, but we should get to that.
Okay. Public comments. I'm going to go around the room once, starting with over here, and if anybody wants to speak, now is your chance to,
Yes.
please.
All right.
Just state your name and what street you live on.
My name is Matthew Farley. I am a former resident of Tenafly at 89 Highwood Avenue. I'm an interested party as I'm the oldest son of George and Ann Farley and will be potentially their caregiver at some point in the future. Thank you all for your voluntary service here. I know it's a long night. I'll try and be brief. First and foremost, apparently there's a proposal on board offered by the Historic Preservation Committee to register my parents' house as a historic site within the borough. This is a legislative move affecting the property owned by my parents. I have a couple questions to ask about it. In the code 35, I think it is XXXXV, I did not read any accommodations for ADA accessible improvements. Both my parents are in their waning years. My dad will be 80 this year, my mom will be 79, and at some point they may not be able to get in and out of their house, and a ramp or some other facility may be necessary to put them in front of it. According to the rules, any changes to the facade need prior approval by the Historic Preservation Committee, the Planning Board, at great expense to my parents. They need to have a full survey done, they need to have architectural drawings done, they need to provide current drawings, sketches, photos, as well as estimates. What accommodations under the ADA guidelines and rules have been made or have been addressed by the Historic Preservation Committee or by the Planning Board or by this council? Second question, has a financial exposure report been done for the specific families? Has anybody looked at what the cost of maintaining the houses are on an annual basis? There are two houses in question, there's both 89 and 93 right now. What does it cost to maintain a historic house now under a present day situation where it's not on a register? And what does it cost afterwards, assuming that they have to comply with the regulations that are set forth? I'm not going to read the regulations, you can all find them on your website. So I don't know if it has a financial exposure been done, presented by the Historic Planning Commission to this council. Has it been discussed with the families? Just food for thought right there. The burden on the owner of having a repair done in the house on the historical register is more cumbersome than somebody outside. If you take a look to get the certificate of acceptance, there are many more hoops and steps that the homeowner at their expense must go through in order to even present an improvement or an addition or a change as simple as painting your front door. You have to follow these rules, otherwise you are in violation. Whether enforcement of the violation will be there, that's not the question. The statement is you are in violation. So in order to make these minor changes you need to submit for a certificate of acceptance, an application for certificate of acceptance to the planning commission, or to the historic commission, then to the planning commission, to have it approved. There's a timeliness matter here, as well as a cost to my parents or to the homeowners. At some point, my parents may need to have some assistance in the house, forget the ADA accessible stuff, or they may need to have some assistance outside the house. That's going to be an increasing cost on a senior who has a limited amount of earning potential left and is living on a fixed income. So at some point, the house may need to be sold. At that time, improvements or changes may need to be made based upon a site inspection to bring it up to code, to meet the buyer's requirements, and to make it market worthy. That's undue stress that's being put on a property owner because this township would like it to be a historic building. The question isn't whether it's historic or not. The question is, are we being fair to the property owners? There are 63 current structures and buildings on our historic, on Tenafly's, I can't say our. Went through the me versus me, the we versus me before here. There are 63 current sites on the historic registry, locally determined. Of those, 4 are structures or parks. I don't know who speaks for them, don't care about them. There are 59 remaining houses on this, or churches, or public or private buildings. 53 of them are in historic districts. 6 of them have been individually singled out. They were voted on in 2002, 2008, and 2005. And they were passed by borough ordinance. I do not know the owners of any of the houses, with the exception of the Marinos, and I do not know whether they were agreeable or not to it being put on there. We also don't know what concessions were made for being put on there at the time. So my question is, in addition, there are 186 identified properties within the township borders. And this is coming from the Historic Preservation Committee's identified property list, and this is dated as of March 26, 2016. There have been no additional houses added according to any public ordinances that have been, or any ordinances that have been made public. So I'm assuming this information is correct. So there are 186 identified properties within the township that are of historic significance. Some of them have been torn down. Some of them may not meet the criteria, but they have been identified. Why are 2 being singled out of 186? Why are you not approaching it from a more logistical standpoint and saying we are going to create another historic district that includes 59 more houses that you already had in there, as opposed to singling out an individual one? Because an individual historic moniker on a house is a black flag on the title when someone's coming in to look at it. But a house in a historic district has curb appeal. 2 very significant things when you're a property owner looking to transfer it. And if you are considered a contributory house in a historic district, you are held to the same standards of an individually registered site. However, you don't have the stigma on the title. You are still within the district, the historic district. You are still subject to the same certificate of acceptance, but it's not you're not being singled out. So I'm questioning why there's only 2. Why are we doing this as a individual site and not as a district? Are we looking at it from the standpoint of improving Tenafly's overall marketability, preserving structure, keeping our existing taxpayers happy, or just worried about more McMansions coming into town? I don't agree with that. But we've lived in this town since 1982, and that house has changed colors about 7 or 8 times. There's never been a stigma on the neighborhood. They've maintained it out of their own pockets. They've never looked for any assistance or any support, with the exception of the police bringing their dogs back. But beyond that, there's been nothing else. So I'm just concerned that you guys are opening Pandora's box with 186 properties, potentially putting a burden on individuals down the line and discriminating against potentially senior citizens. So, thank you.
So, Matt and his brother, George's son Patrick, what he didn't say, but what it's abundantly clear is we're totally against this. Okay? And we're gonna fight it and make sure that my parents are treated properly and fairly. Okay? George, some of you know his history, likes a good fight. So if we can work together to find something that works, that's great, because we love the town and it's forever. Okay? Thank you.
Please. Jeff Grossman, Downey Drive. First, I want to thank Councilman Bash for asking me to look into the STAR program. I do appreciate that, and I did send out a memo to him, which I understand he forwarded. I want to make clear, I'm not sure that that's the solution for the reasons that were stated, that it benefits other communities. What I do want to make clear is that senior citizens in this town are hurt by taxes, and we all understand that. And we do a lot to try and keep businesses here, and we should take an effort to try and keep those who have lived here a long time here and not just say, my kids are done with school and leave. So even though that may not be the program, I would like to continue to look for solutions that might help. The nice thing about STAR in New York is that it does have a higher threshold. The bad thing is it's just a redistribution program, which does not necessarily work. But we have another, between New York and New Jersey, we have another 48 states we can look at and see what they're doing to keep their seniors and not bury the system. Thank you.
Lauren Dayton, 15 Laurel Avenue. I want to raise an issue that has been brought up to my attention. We, Jeff Grossman and I, are the Democratic candidates here, and it was told to me that whether through misunderstanding or bad communication, our flyers were removed from a certain place in which we were advertising a senior center meet and greet for tomorrow at Wednesday, 4:30. And I want to just make sure that our community is an open and expressive place where debate is allowed and public discourse is allowed, where everyone's voices are heard, and that our senior residents are able to meet all the candidates and hear what we have to say. So I just wanted to make the public aware. Thank you.
Well, I retired for the first time.
George Farley.
Yeah.
Not everybody.
Our family purchased a second home in South Carolina in 1996. I retired for the first time in 1999, and in 2000, after my son Thomas graduated from high school, we started spending 10 months a year in South Carolina. And we did that pretty much up through 2014, when I had multiple bypass surgery up here, and we decided to spend more time in New Jersey and less time in South Carolina. But during those 12 years or so, we kept that house. It was empty. We maintained it. We paid the taxes. We did everything. And the reason we did that was because I wanted to maintain a place where my kids could come home if they needed to. I mean, in these uncertain times, you never know when your kids are going to show up and knock on your door and say, I need a place to sleep. So I kept that house in reserve, and that's pretty much what my father did for me. Now, with the historical designation, I think that it sort of alters our plans a little bit, because my house is 153 years old. Maintenance on it is out of sight to keep it up in its historical appearance, which we have done. And I'm not sure that this ordinance makes my house a white elephant for my children. That I plan to pass it on to them and let them decide what happens to the house. But now I'm not sure that they individually or collectively will be able to afford to maintain that house once I'm not around. So it's a long-range view. We have no plans for leaving Tenafly. We have no plans for selling the house right now. But, things change, life changes. We may at some point have to sell a house. And we just may have to do it for a lot of reasons. And so I'm just saying I believe that the historical designation is an encumbrance that on the value of the house and on my plans for my family. And so I wrote a letter today and I pointed some of these things out. But essentially what I'm saying is that if you want to do that, this is a great town. I'm going to support your decision and do everything in my power to abide by the ordinances and the rules and the regulations. But in turn, I turned around and I said to you that perhaps for my house and my neighbor's house and any other house in a similar situation, maybe there should be some leeway on the assessment of the house, and that the assessment should take into consideration any potential impairments resulting from the historical designation. And we can get realtors to give reports and data and that sort of thing, and compile economic data as to what they think, not only for Tenafly, but for around the country. New York has a big-time landmark law, and there's been substantial litigation over that from what I understand. I don't want to litigate, but I just want you make your informed decision that you consider the fact that, it's just not preserving nice-looking houses and nice-looking neighborhoods. You're really affecting the lives of the people that live in this town and have over the years, in small pieces, contributed to the town. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Karen Hughes, 330 Angle Street. I'm also the chairman of the Historic Preservation Commission. Thank you for coming tonight. I really appreciate all the comments you made, and some of those points are things that the HPC has been very interested in pursuing. And of course, yes, we do have 186 houses on the borough inventory that are also on part of the master plan. And they're houses that were identified in the 1982-83 Bergen County Survey of Cultural and Historic Resources, which is how they ended up on our borough inventory. And as you all know, and this has been stated before, we're a 7-member volunteer panel, and you know that it's a time-consuming process to evaluate these homes. There's some cost to it, so we're looking at the most important ones as we go along. We can't look at all of them at once. It's just humanly impossible. So it's not a question of singling out these two as much as realizing that we have some important properties in this town that are worth saving. And of course, you don't need me to tell you that we've lost 2 important historic properties in the last year. We've really enjoyed talking with your father and working with him in this last year or so. I wish, Matt, that you and your brothers had come to the meetings earlier when the HBC was actively discussing this to address some of the points that you've raised. I don't want to take up so much time to go point by point on some of the things that you've raised, but I might mention that, for instance, the issue of ADA, you're absolutely right, that's not part of the ordinance that was drafted 20 years ago. And yet, we're not in the business of preventing someone from adjusting their home to be compliant with ADA requirements. And I would I don't know the building code well enough, but I would venture to say that even without historic designation, probably some of the modifications you want to make are subject to the permit approval process anyway from the building department. So I'm not sure that whether you're landmarked or not is really going to change that challenge that you might have in terms of making those modifications. And I would say the same is true of any exterior renovations that need to be made to this home in order to prepare it for resale. If there are attributes of the house that need to be improved in order to make it more desirable in a resale market, those are things that need to be done, whether it's landmarked or not. Matt, you described having landmark status as a stigma and a black mark, and I'm not sure, I appreciate your perspective, but I'm not sure that's a perspective that's shared by everyone. And in fact, I live in a landmarked home, and it's a house that is approximately the same age, so I'm very familiar with the cost of maintaining my home, and it would be a cost that I would have to undertake whether my house was designated or not. In fact, most of my repairs, my serious costly repairs I made before my house was designated. So whether it was landmarked or not, it's not going to change the fact that repairs have to be made to homes. In fact, I have friends with new homes that have had very expensive repairs that have had to be made, and some of this is just the fact of home ownership. You have repairs that have to be made sometimes. I understand, for instance, that at least it was stated in a letter that I think your father wrote that there are 7 chimneys that are unlined. Well, I had chimneys that were unlined when I bought my house. I had to have flues put into some of them. I chose not to put flues into others, and so I don't use those fireplaces. But this is just part of owning a house, unfortunately. I mean, I don't want your father to have unburdened an excess of home repairs. I don't want that for my own father, who is also approximately the same age and happens to live in Tenafly. But I'm not sure whether or not we landmark the house or not is going to change that calculus for you. We don't require certain repairs. What happens is you apply to make your repairs, you go to the building office, and many of those repairs are subject to building and zoning requirements anyway. It's just that the HPC then looks at what you propose to do and checks to see if it's sympathetic with the historic character of the house. The fact that you might need a zoning permit to put on a ramp or to change the driveway or to put up a fence, those are not HPC requirements. Those come from your own building code. So I'm not sure that historic landmarking is going to change that, unfortunately. You're still going to have to go through that process of going to the building department, getting your permits, waiting for inspections to be done. And hopefully we're a town that accommodates seniors by pushing through those accommodations quickly. I know certainly at the HBC we've worked very hard in the last couple of years to become what we call user-friendly. So we've tried to react to our requests for reviews, informal reviews, formal reviews, certificates of appropriateness in a very timely way. And so, again, we welcome any questions you have, if you want to come to our meetings, and we always encourage homeowners to come with a project that's in development so that we can head off issues before they become issues, before timing is an issue with seasonal repairs.
Can I ask you a question?
Can I respond as well? I was sat in a better spot had I known.
This isn't a retort, it's just a request.
Sure.
Can you send us the empirical evidence, if you will, in terms of the impact that historical designation has on saleability, days on market, comps?
You can get that from your real estate agent. I'm not a real estate agent, so I don't have access to that
I'm going to cut you off because I don't want to get into back and forth.
Understood. But I would assume something like that would be
done. But I will say an
you
example
can speak to her
recently.
after the meeting and ask her for these things, and I guarantee you that Karen and the rest of the commission will bend over backwards to
that would be great.
To do whatever you.
But that does bring up an important point. Our most significant historic home in Tenafly at 135 Highwood actually did just change hands in the last 2 years. So the fact that it was on the local register as well as the National Historic Register did not impede the sale of that house. I think the new homeowners consider it an honor to own that house with its designations, and they're making the necessary repairs that they wanted to make. I'm not sure that our review process impacted their choices of finishes or expansion. They already came to us with a plan. The cost was already embedded in it. It wasn't anything that we added to it. And certainly that house has, I mean, it's not as though historic homes and historic districts aren't reselling. Clearly, homes are turning over in those areas. So.
Karen, we're going to have a discussion about this issue after public comment is over. I have a couple of questions that I think will aid in that discussion, and if anybody at the council table wants to ask Karen a question, I think now is a good time to do it.
Mr. Rossi, may I ask her a question also? Part of that?
I'd rather not go back and forth, maybe...
This is the public comment, is it not?
Yeah, give me a minute. Wait, I'll come back to you.
I'll wait my turn.
First of all, there was a question about ADA. In your experience, has any designated home required ADA ramps or ADA improvements on the exterior?
In my time on the HPC in the last 10 years, no one has ever come to us with an ADA request.
Would you say that, I mean, the questions that I'm hearing them ask, you responded by saying you got to make repairs, and if you need an ADA ramp, you need an ADA ramp. That's not the question that I'm hearing. The question that I'm hearing is if they need a specific repair, due to the designation, will that repair cost more than if the house wasn't designated? Not does the designation require the repair. That's not what they're asking. They're saying, you know, if they got to put a flume in a chimney because it's designated, are they going to come?
We don't rule on flumes and chimneys. That's
not
a great example.
Poor example then. But if they need to do something, they need a repair that needs your approval. Does acquiring your approval add to the cost of the repair?
Our permits do not cost anything. In fact, it's the only building permit that doesn't have a cost. Whether I think what you're really asking me is, do we require a certain type of finish or repair that would cost more than, say, another repair?
Right.
I don't have a way of answering that accurately, because in any repair, you have a cheaper alternative and a more expensive alternative. And I'm not trying to dodge the question. I truly don't know, because you're asking me to evaluate something that hasn't been presented to me.
Sure.
Karen, I need to understand something, so help me here, please. The historical designation only applies to the exterior of the house?
That's correct.
So if I want to knock down a wall inside, repair the chimney, repair the fireplace, change the boiler, does that have to do? No.
No.
So the only...
No, but you would need permits from the building.
I understand.
We understand.
Which I think is interesting, because we get beat up
I'm trying to understand what is the
Only
historical...
exterior.
Only the exterior. Windows, shingles, and stuff like that. Is that correct?
Right. Anything that alters the exterior of the home as viewed from the street or from the neighbors, if it can be viewed.
All right. So, okay, thank you.
If you have a question, I have no problem. I don't want to get into
No, I have questions.
Opinion versus opinion.
Nope,
That's not
I
the
have
time
very
for this.
specific questions.
All right. If the council would allow...
Oh, absolutely.
I think this is important enough. And then you want to go, you're the senior, you want to go first?
Yeah, I read the Tenafly guidelines, and they're very good. And they go into great detail as to how certain things have to be done or should be done, and specifically pointing of foundations and pointing of chimneys and that sort of thing. They do recommend that these be done in a very, very competent and good fashion, which is not cheap. And, you know, you can do these things on the cheap and not spend much money and see it all fall out in a year or two. Or you can paint your house and put on one coat of cheap paint and watch it bubble and flake over the next 2 years, which one of my neighbors did. You know, there are ways, but I think, the guidelines require that you maintain your house in a fashion that is consistent with good maintenance practices.
Okay. You addressed my ADA question, whether it has to comply with the standards of the historical. So I'm not going to address that. On the list of 186 houses, are there 2 houses where the owners have petitioned for historic registry?
On the, the 86
Out of the
includes-
186
No, I'm
houses
asking-
identified on the borough list,
Right, is that-
has any owner come to the Historic Preservation Society
Yes.
and requested historic?
Yes.
Have any of them been granted?
Yes.
Since when? 2012 was the last one on that list.
Marino is after that, I think.
How about the house on Thatcher Road?
That's
Yeah,
2000.
Thatcher Road was
Yeah,
another
2012.
one.
What year was that, 12?
2012 was the last one on this
Yeah,
list. I think.
Marino was
I'm not
15 or
really sure.
16.
Are you asking like
Marina was
in all
last
of
year.
Yeah, it was
history?
last year.
Are there people
Yes,
out
people
there
do- yes,
that
yes.
want it right now?
That
could
want
be-
it right now?
Yeah.
Not like,
There's no
Currently.
applications in front of the historical site?
No.
Okay, that was just a question. And I'm 49 years old, I'm in my house for 20 years. I am not going to be selling my house for 20, 30 more years. I have the capability of doing work in my house, and it is not a historical house, but I'm not gonna age you, but we grew up together. So, you are in a historic house. You have the income and capabilities of addressing changes over time, do you not? I'm asking a question. There's a difference. Do you see this? Do you see whether there's a difference? Do you see? No. Do you see whether there's a difference between somebody in their 40s or 50s owning a house versus somebody in their 80s?
I stated that before. I have a
I'm
father
trying to
that
give you a
lives in
little
this town.
latitude, but
It is public time.
I understand, but you had your time, and I don't want you to...
I would have positioned myself in a different seat had I known you were going around the room, Mr. Russell.
Peter, aren't we going to have more comments, discussion during
still a
the
public
actual hearing?
Well, I would like to
Yeah.
also mention that I wrote a letter to Mr. Farley in November of 2016, and this is the first that I've met his son Matt with all these questions, and we had so many meetings. We had meetings every month, and you could have come any month or contacted me in between.
Why don't
And
you
this
just
is
put
the
it
first
off?
that you've asked me any of these questions.
Why?
And I would love to prepare answers,
Had I
well thought out answers for your
I would have liked more
questions.
time than
Consider the same
yesterday.
decisions
We are
over and over.
going to...
I would like people.
When this question comes up, there'll be time for discussion before we... I'm not saying there's going to be a question and an answer where you're going to be able to question her, but you'll be able to make whatever statements you are, you can talk...
So there'll be another public.
We had a hearing when this would have been appropriate. Hearings are appropriate times to have questions and answers and a back and forth. I don't think,
David, you want to speak?
Well, my kids ganged up on me in the last week about this. It's my fault because I didn't tell them about it.
Well, I'm likely gonna buy the house, and I don't wanna own a house in a historical designation.
it's not the worst thing in the
We'll
world.
talk this evening up to you. It's your fault.
Right?
We'll talk this evening up to
Best
you.
thing
It's
or
your
worst thing, we
fault.
don't want it. It's being
Don't worry, we
imposed.
all have, anybody that has kids understands completely.
Well, why should my life be any different from?
Exactly. David?
David Wall, 11 Tower Road. I'm also on the Historic Preservation Commission. I'll gladly answer some of the questions that you raised. As far as, there is no fee for the, for filing an application for a certificate of occupancy. And be assured, if any future mayor or council try to impose one, the HPC would go straight to the papers and make an issue of it. You know, we're on...
Thanks for the heads up.
We're on the side of the historic homeowners. Number two, the financial exposure. Now, almost all the articles that I've seen, not all, but they indicate that it can enhance the selling price of a home. Look at it this way. if you have an old house, you're selling an old house. If you have the same house that has been made a landmark, it opens to view groups of people that would like to own a landmark house. I mean, they consider it an honor, prestige, which it is. As far as, the more hoops to go, for painting a door, painting the whole house is not a major change. And our ordinance specifically provides that for minor changes and major changes. And this is what happens when there's a minor change like that. It doesn't go to it doesn't even go to the commission. It goes to the chairman of the commission. They sit down, and there can be a host of paints, different colored paints, and they sit with the homeowner and they agree on what paint they want to make. And if it's touch up, there's no need to even do that. As far as the ramps are concerned, in fact, we did have a situation. The Davis-Johnson house at 91 West Clinton Avenue.
Demers Lyle.
Demers Lyle. Anyhow, they were told that they have like a nursery school. They were told they must have ramps, all right? So there wasn't any squabble about whether those ramps were to be put in. And they were put in, period. No certificate of appropriateness. The law that it had to be done. And so it was done. And so, I wouldn't worry about the ramps. Why these two houses out of the 186 we're picking on? No, you didn't say picking, but very simple answer. I'm telling you that your house is the most desirable among those 186 to be landmarked. Why? Well, I'm the Class B member of the commission. 2015 Bergen County Historic Preservation Award. They only gave one. Well, anyhow, why is it? Because there has been no dispute that it is historic, but goes back to circa 1867. It has a gorgeous mansard roof. It has a tower. Just one look is all it takes to say whether that house should be preserved. Would you be happy to settle on calling it an historic district rather than, do you think, say it's historic house is a stigma? Well, maybe it can be with the next house next door be called an historic district. As you say, it makes no difference in terms of what future homeowners would have to do or what homeowners would have to do. But I'm not saying that I agree at all that there's any stigma in being called historic. Now your comment about the assessment on the house could be low. Maybe that could be lowered. I think it's a great idea. And I've heard the question raised as far as that it might not be legal to give a break to historic houses. I've heard that said. I don't know if it's true or not. But the way you put it sounds legalese to me. I'm just a retired New York lawyer. But I think if the arguments could be raised, I don't mind saying it, that there may be a risk in whether the value of the house would go up or go down. Now, we're not talking 25% here, but 1%, if you put 1% of whatever you assess for, or maybe less than 1%, you're still talking considerable money. So, I mean, if you want to try something like that, I wouldn't be surprised if the HBC would support it.
The problem is the die is being cast tonight.
The what?
The die is being cast tonight.
Well,
It's being voted on tonight, and then anything after that is on appeal.
I don't want to have a dialogue, please.
I'm sorry.
What,
Are you finished, Dave?
no, just, cost of repairs. If you come to the, HPC meeting, we sometimes save the cost of repairs because we have an engineer, we have someone with a degree from the design in Rhode Island College, and they are familiar with the various, the most efficient way to make repairs, more than you. And, okay. All right.
Thank you, David. Anybody else care to speak?
I had 30 seconds.
I'm sorry?
30 seconds.
Well, I'll get back to you in a second.
Thank you, Mayor Rustin. Thank you, Council. Ed Maslish, 55 Ivy Lane. I think this has been a very interesting discussion about the historic preservation. I think historic preservation is a very important function of the town, but it also is taking property away from the taxpayer and the property owner. Under current Supreme Court precedent, we're not required to compensate property owners for it, but it might be good policy to do it. As this prior gentleman, I didn't catch your name, said, he thought it might be a good idea to take Mr. Farley's suggestion about maybe a reduction in the property taxes. You could consider doing that. You can consider some sort of a compensation at the time that the designation is made. I don't have the answer to that, but I think it's something that the council might want to consider. We wouldn't be mandated to give compensation, but we might end some of these fights and do fairness and justice to the taxpayers of the town to do that. And it'll protect their property values, it'll protect the good relations in the town. And, in fairness, I don't think that, Mr. Farley and his family should be the ones who are solely responsible for paying for what the town wants, and we're all going to benefit from it. So it seems to me that that's an appropriate function for the council to compensate them in some way, whether through a payment up front or through some sort of property tax relief. And I would just say that I hope the council would consider at least studying that and thinking about it. Thank you.
Yep. Andrew McCash, 50 Sherwood Road. I just want to see a few things about Fistus Pond. And I've heard a mayor and councilor talk about the concern of spending a lot of money on something that may not need to be spent all the way, and to allocate the money up front, even if in fact the pieces would have to be allocated piecemeal as the actual expenses come up. But so I heard that. So Fistus Pond is the biggest freshwater reservoir in this part of the county. It is a environmental asset. It is, I'm sure you guys heard all the things about the environmental aesthetics benefits to the area. It's a migratory bird sanctuary. It is a key jewel of Tenafly. However, you guys have some concern, you feel that you need to discuss spending that much money. So I have a suggestion that may help momentum go forward without even committing the town even to set aside a lot of money. So the numbers that were in the proposal and the resolution are based on Miser Consulting numbers. The biggest share of that is the dredging. Even though it's only a small piece of the dredging that the Montami sediment filled up, and that's all we're trying to take out, it is a huge gap in the potential cost because we're not sure what's in the material that's going to be dredged up. So the disposal cost could be pennies, or it could be a lot of money. That's why even Mazer's numbers were from like a couple of $100,000 all the way to $500,000 just for that one piece of the dike. So my proposal to maintain momentum, you guys talked about doing the dike and doing some of the other stuff, is to let's back out the dredging part of the pie. Let's say half of it, or just a round number. We can. I don't know what you guys feel comfortable about doing. Approve the rest so we can do the dike, the hydrating, some of the other stuff. In the meantime, it will get the project going so we can work with Miser to analyze what's in the land, what's in the dredged material. Can we store it on the nature center? Can we sell it as a valuable asset? Does it have to be shipped to Timbuktu because it's so polluted? We have no idea until we do the exploratory work. But don't stop the momentum of the rest of the work, and then let the engineering company do the soil analysis, and then we can figure out what the true cost of that piece of the project is.
$161,000.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you.
Anybody else down there?
You can take care of that.
What happens? What happens with that piece?
Johanna Gambro, Ravine Road.
Something
I
we
have one last plea, 30 seconds. In Ordinance 17-23. Again, refers to the parking lot as the swim club parking lot. That was a nickname given to it a long time ago. I realized it does not belong to the swim clubs. It is the municipal parking lot, and I would like that swim changed to municipal, because it never has actually belonged to the swim clubs. I don't want cost to be suddenly referred back because people think it belongs to the swim club. It doesn't. And I would like that word changed in the ordinance to municipal. I've asked it many, many times with no result, but I don't believe we should pass an ordinance with an incorrect name.
Thank you.
I have a question too, Mayor Wilson. Hi.
Yes.
Hercules Invictus, 3 Columbus Drive. As chairperson of the AFA committee, I would like to find out more about ADA issues in historic housing. Who would I speak to so I can educate myself?
Go to the HPC meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment, and I'll move on to the consent agenda. A motion to approve the consent agenda, please.
So,
The second.
yeah, just
Second.
Please call the roll.
okay.
Councilmember Bash?
Right, I have yes with the exception of the collective bargaining agreement.
What number?
D, which,
17,363.
yeah, D, basically, I think that's a ton of money to be paid for.
Okay.
11.
Councilmember
Yes.
Hayter?
Yeah.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefanowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Zinn?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, let's go to public hearings.
Yes.
And Lisette, you wanted to read 1717, please?
Yes, the following ordinance published herewith was first read by title only on September 12, 2017, and posted on the bulletin board of the lobby of the Municipal Center. Ordinance number 17-17, an ordinance to amend the zoning map of the Borough of Tenafly, adopted on February 9, 2016, and to amend and supplement the land development regulations of the Borough of Tenafly to designate certain properties within the borough as historic as set forth in the Historic Preservation Plan of the Master Plan of the Borough of Tenafly and amending Chapter 35 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly entitled Land Development Regulations.
Lisette, you're the borough clerk. Do you have a problem if, before I open this to the public for comments on the ordinance, if I ask the members of the governing body if they have anything they'd like to discuss?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll start with you, Shama, and go around the table.
I just want to clarify, this voting yes means we are voting to designate the house as historic, right?
Correct.
Now, both owners are against the designation,
Correct.
and that bothers me, because, you know, I love the idea of historic houses and beautiful houses in Tenafly, but it really concerns me that we have two owners who are vehemently opposed to their houses being declared historic, and I just feel uncomfortable voting yes for it. That's all I want to say.
Max?
There was a question about, and I'm going to ask our borough attorney, to the best of my knowledge, there is not too much we can do to change either the taxes or the type of reimbursement for designated something historical. Is that correct?
That's correct. The taxes, we can't change taxes. The New Jersey Constitution requires taxes to be apportioned equally across the board.
Based on appraisal and value and stuff like that.
But one thing that would affect the taxes is the assessment. Now, the assessor doesn't just have carte blanche to change assessments. Assessments are based upon market value. So if in fact the designation of property as being historic would result in a decrease of market value, that would be reflected in a decrease in the assessment, which translates directly into a decrease in taxes. I would say, though, that in order to obtain a reduction in a non-reassessment year, the decrease has to be more than 15%, because otherwise the county tax board doesn't have authority to reduce it, because there's a 15%, we call it the corridor, it's wiggle room that the town has with respect to assessments. However, when the town comes up for reassessment, when we do a revow or a reassessment, in those years, it doesn't matter what the difference is. So if there's a 2% difference, you get that 2% reduction. Just does not apply in a non-revow year.
So, just to answer my question, because you turned around to talk.
I'm sorry.
Okay, is there a way for us to basically, when an assessment is made, to tell the assessor, look at the historical houses and make sure that in your assessment, which is basically comparison value and so, those are historical houses, so as such, take care of the assessment. Is there any process that is legal for us to continue that?
Max, when you say us, who are you referring to?
The council and the mayor and council.
So you're asking if the mayor and council can any way impact
Exactly.
the assessment?
Exactly. If there is a process that exists for us to say, look at not just this house, all the historically designated houses, and make a comparison between historical designation and non-historical in order to make sure that we correctly assess them.
The assessors in New Jersey towns are agents of the county. They're not really agents of the municipality. Their obligation is to make sure that assessments are fair, that the property is fairly assessed. And when you disagree with the opinion of the assessor, you have the right to file a tax appeal. So, but the mayor and council can't say, we want you to reduce a property because it's designated historic, because the real review and decision is based upon market value. Now, you might suggest that, we're concerned that the designation may decrease the value of houses. Why don't you have the company that does our evaluations give us an opinion on whether or not it does. I would say this is ideal with them all the time. The answer is probably going to be, it really depends on the house. Every house is different.
So, Bill, wouldn't you say that it would tend to be the responsibility of the individual homeowner, not the mayor and council, to address their assessment?
Oh, absolutely.
What I think I heard you say is that for example, Mr. Farley or any other particular homeowner, they could go to the assessor and say, my assessment is too high. But the only way they're gonna get that changed in a what was the term you used?
Revalue. Oh, revalue.
Revalue is to go to the tax board and appeal the assessment. Does the assessor have the ability, he walks in the door tomorrow and says, I think my assessment's too high. He can provide whatever ammunition he has, but does the assessor have the ability to open that particular situation and basically do a reval in the house? Or
No.
in a non-reval, it's only the charge of the county tax board?
That's called spot revaluation, and that's illegal. But in New Jersey, what an assessor would do, let's assume that Mr. Harley went into our current assessor now and said, I think that my house is overassessed. I think that the historic designation has impacted its value. The assessor doesn't have the authority herself to reduce the assessment, but she could file an assessor's appeal. Basically, the assessor would go and file an appeal to the county saying, if it was not a reval year. In a reval year, they can do it. But if it wasn't a reval year, the assessor would file an assessor's appeal. Now, generally, those are looked at very favorably, and the county tax board generally will take the assessor's recommendation to reduce the assessment. Unless the homeowner wants to object to it, but usually the homeowners wouldn't object to reducing
But
the taxes.
in order to motivate the assessor to do that, don't you need...
The homeowner usually
do you need
goes.
to provide some sort of data, some sort of ammunition? I mean,
it's really in the discretion of the assessor. We've had situations where just because of the way the timing of revals, certain properties were assessed too high, and even without the homeowner coming to say, hey, my assessment's too high, because of the review that's constantly going on in town, the assessor may say, you know what, this property ended up being overassessed. Why? Don't know, just because, but we know based upon other sales that this house is overassessed. Or we have a sale of a house. It's assessed at $2.5 million, it sells for $1.9 million. The assessor says something's out of whack. Why did it sell? If it was a arm's length sale and the house was properly on the market for a reasonable amount of time, the assessor has to say, well, why is it assessed at $2.5 million? Equalized. I'm talking equalized, obviously, and it's really sold for 1.5, 1.9. She could do an assessor's appeal to reduce it, even if the people don't bother to do it.
I think your question has been answered. Do you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Paul, you have anything to say?
I think we've heard a lot of things tonight, and I think that the policy is sound. The Tenafly having a bank of historic sites makes sense. It's part of how the history of the town has developed, how it's grown and evolved. That said, there are definitely improvements that can be made to the process. The HPC did everything they were supposed to. They noticed their hearings. They sent the necessary letters out, and everything went to the newspapers. That said, a lot of things in market value have changed since the Historic Preservation Commission was started in 1988 and went into effect in 1990, since the Farleys have moved into their homes. And there are a lot of considerations that I think historic preservation people fully support, but everyone needs to be engaged on. I wish that everyone had, as Karen said, come together like that and spoken at the hearing for the property. The HPC doesn't have to provide a list of sellability, but that might be something nice that they could have worked together on months ago. So I'll just leave it at that. I think that the program is valid. I think the town taking an interest in historic sites makes sense, but there are always room for places to improve the process of the town and the homeowners working together. It's not supposed to be a burden, and most of us would not support a body of government telling anyone, this is what you have to do. That's not the goal. You know, the goal is, as Matt Farley said, it is something shared to everyone, and the burden falling all on the homeowner is a valid concern.
Dan, you have anything to add?
No.
Mark?
So my comments are, we talked about this last time. Recently, we lost 53 Knickerbocker and 87 County Road, significant historical sites. There was lots of argument at this table, lots of discussion. Everyone was disappointed at the end that we lost them. And one of the things we came up with was we blamed the Historic Preservation Committee for not looking forward, for trying to save the houses after the horses were out of the barn. And so we tasked them with going ahead and preserving historic houses. And so they went ahead and did exactly what we asked them to do, and they did it very well. And they identified these two houses along with X amount of other houses that should have the designation. So tonight we have to decide, because we've been through this for a significant period of time. We've had a lot of discussion on these two properties. We have to decide if we want to preserve the history of this town and the character of this town with the same passion we talked about 53 Knickerbocker and 87 County Road, and whether we really believe in the things we're talking about. Now, as Karen mentioned, the renovations, and to me this is a significant issue, this is about the outside architectural view of the houses. It's not about whether the chimneys are safe or not, or whether the stairways meet code. You have to have all that work done, whether the houses are historical or not. It's the cost of home ownership. But our decision tonight is whether we have any respect for the history of this town and we want to preserve it and protect it. Otherwise, why do we have a historic preservation meeting? You know, historic preservation committee is all we're going to do if all we're going to do is discuss it.
I'd just like to add that this is a very difficult decision for the governing body to make. For as long as I've been doing this, we have never designated a property against the wishes of the property owner. You are willing to take responsibility for this exercise, but I'm sorry, I'm going to supersede you. I'm going to take a lot of responsibility for it also, because as somebody who drives all over town and up and down Highwood quite frequently, I don't know, I'm not going to take full credit, but I was all over Karen and the HPC because I love your home and I love your neighbor's home. And I believe it's the best interest of the town for those homes to be preserved because they are special homes. And you know, I don't have to tell you that. You know it. You lived in that home for 40 years. You've treated it as a home that's special. Okay, and I understand completely your concerns about taking the next step. And we did, as a body, criticize the Historic Preservation Commission for not being proactive and not trying to save these properties that we lost. And whether you can argue till the cows come home about 53 Knickerbocker and 87 County Road, but we did criticize efforts that tried to lock the barn after the cow got out. So they went ahead and did something very, very proactive here. And they did it absolutely in a correct fashion. They did it perfectly. They followed all of the rules and brought us to this point. And, you know, I admire some of the things that Councilman Zinna said. We want to save the historic aspects of the town. But, you know, these homes belong to the homeowners. They're part of our community, and the question before this body is, you know, the rights of the homeowner versus the rights of the community. And I need to go back no further. We were talking about for a second about a historic district, and I said to myself, the worst situation we ever had here as a governing body, worst, I said the toughest decision, was when we tried to declare a street a historic district. And what made it tough was it split right down the middle. 50% of the people in that street wanted it, and 50% of them didn't want it. So it fell upon this body to make the decision. They made a decision, and not surprisingly, considering how we do things around here, 6 months later they changed it. But I don't think we have the luxury here. I think we have to make a decision here tonight and live by it. I think we have to take into account our goals for this community, but I also think we have to take into account the feelings of the property owners. And neither of them have said that if you don't designate it, I'm going to knock the house down tomorrow and build a mansion. They've both said that they respect their homes and they're going to keep it the way they can. They mentioned saleability, and I respect all of the things that my friends on the HPC say, but I've gone to a couple of realtors that I have a lot of respect for. And they basically said a designated house will not have the same marketability as a non-designated. There's going to be people that won't look at these homes because they're designated. Now, David made a very interesting point. He said, if you go to sell your house, I think it was David, you're selling an old house. If it's designated, you're selling an old designated house. That's a very valid point. I think an old designated house has more value to it to a certain degree than an old house, but only to certain people. So it's a very, very difficult decision, and I agree with most of the comments all five of you have made. So we're at the point now where I'm going to ask the public comment on this before we make a motion. We're going to have public comment, and once again, because I went this way the first time, I'm going to go the other way this time. I'm going to start down here. I'm going to start with, we're going to go to my right, to your left of Lisette. Anybody has any public comments?
I don't have any further questions, comments.
No. Anybody up? David, anybody further comments? Mr. Farley?
Are you doing both ordinances?
No,
or
we're just doing 17.
17, all right.
Any further comments?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Just state your name for the
Patrick Farley, George Farley's son. Look, you're right. We've taken care of the house and we have every intention to do so. I disagree with the fact that it's a now or never decision. I think if you guys can iron out something that's fair and equitable, we'd be totally supportive of it. We're not against a historical designation. We just haven't seen any empirical evidence to tell. Everyone's saying, oh, I think, and I saw, and I read. You can't legislate, right, based on what your personal opinions are when you're impacting other people's lives. Because you're not realtors. You're not even buyers in the market right now, right? You're just people who are sitting in a room saying, this is what we think. You lost 2 properties. I'm sorry. You know, I love this town very much. I want to see town preserved. But this isn't the right way to do it.
This is a significant decision. As Mr. Rustin said, that this is the first time you're voting on something where both property owners are steadfastly against it. So I just want to point out that by voting yes, you as a governing committee are limiting the rights and liberties of a property owner to effect change on their property without permission from a governing body. I was called a libertarian the other day, but this is an infringement on personal property ownership and rights, the vote you're making right now. So think hard and long on that one.
Okay, we'll close the public comment section. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll read it.
I move to pass and adopt on second and final reading ordinance 17-17, that notice of same shall be published according to law.
A second, please.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Councilmember Bash?
Yes.
Councilmember Hayter?
No.
Councilmember Park?
No.
Councilmember Stefanovic?
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Yes.
Okay. We'll move on to 17-18, which is the, well, we're going to do all of them together except for,
17-18.
Won't we taking 17-18 now off
Yeah,
the...
we are doing-
17-18, right, is the pond. We're going to...
No,
No,
the
no,
17
that's the
is
trees.
the trees.
It's the
trees. We're going to take that off.
Well, any ones that are being tabled need to be tabled
At the time.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so
before reading anything.
Lisette, you want to read that then? Just,
Before I read the title into the record, is when the tabling should take.
So we need a motion to table 17,
And
which one is the
19.
trees?
17, 18.
17, make a motion to table 17, 18.
And 17, 19. Do we do
Well, we're
both
gonna-
together?
No, because we're
One
gonna
at
have
a
a
time?
discussion
We gotta
about it.
discuss,
Oh,
we're gonna
okay.
discuss the
No,
change.
once you table, there's no discussion.
So, we're-
Can we do two together then?
but we're not,
Let's
Sean, we're not tabling it.
Why?
Binding until the.
Why? I thought we were going to table it.
No, we're gonna have a conversation about it in terms of the dollars.
Okay, all right, so then let's
There's
just.
not going to be a motion to table now.
There can't be a motion
And
to
you can't
table.
change the amount is a significant change.
Right.
You can't amend
So
the
let's table it now and
Oh, so we have to
redo
change
it.
the ordinance.
Yeah, we have to redo it
You
then.
could table it,
Yeah.
and since we're towards the end of the year, if you didn't take any action, that ordinance disappears. So you want to do a new ordinance, you still have time in the calendar to
But
introduce.
if we change that ordinance, which is a major change, we said we want to change that, can we take it up next session?
You would have to introduce a new ordinance because it's too significant of a change.
Too significant of the change.
Changes the entire ordinance.
All right, then let's table this now, and then let's start a new ordinance in the next thing, because this is,
If we
Well, how does
table,
everyone feel about
yeah,
this?
just let's go one by one. If we table 17, 18, till we get the answer, do we have to reintroduce it again?
No, you just take it off the table and
Okay.
then.
There's no language on that one.
Okay, so we do.
what are we doing? Explain it.
So we table
One has no
17,
language
18.
change.
We table 17, 18, we're gonna retake it in a week.
So,
No, what,
Okay, now we're going to 17, 19.
okay, we have to first do
Okay, let
it.
me
Time
let me
out.
explain.
Time out.
Let me explain, okay?
Time out.
When you table an ordinance, it's tabled, there's no debate. You could have a discussion at the next meeting, like once you receive the planning board information. Once you have that, somebody could bring up, I vote to remove from the table 17, 18, and go ahead and vote on it.
Okay,
so that's what we want to
no,
do.
wait a minute. What if you want to make changes to it, like to the one we had about the
It
pond?
depends on the change.
Well, first we're doing
Some
the
changes
sustainable.
could be minor, but it's.
Let's do 17, 18 first.
Table
Sorry.
trees.
yes, we table trees.
So we.
So I need a motion.
A
I'll make a motion to table 17-18.
I second.
Okay. Councilmember Bash?
Yes to the motion to table.
That's what we're voting on.
Yes. Councilmember Hayter?
Yes,
To table.
table.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Stefanovich?
Yes.
Councilmember Zidane?
Yes to table.
So 17, 18 has been tabled.
Table.
Okay, now
Now
17, 19.
19.
17, so what are we allowed to do? Let's say we want to have a conversation about 17, 19 and decide if we can remove X amount of dollars from it.
That's a substantial
No, that's
change.
a substantial change.
Then
Once you
table
take-
and
No, I think we ought to vote no on this and just reopen it next week.
that's,
When you say next week,
Well,
next
Next
time.
session.
Next meeting, put it
But-
put it on the, under old business.
Now,
Wait, wait,
If you're
wait a
gonna,
minute.
the timing doesn't
The
work.
timing does not work because you only have two public meetings left. You have November 20th and December 12th.
Okay, so wait, before we talk about tabling it for a second, so I would vote to approve this the way it is.
So would I.
Yeah, I would.
So I
Okay,
think we
you
need
got
to
three
have
votes.
both.
no, you got the three
Just
vote,
not-
because I'm going to vote no.
That's okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And then you have the option
Yeah,
to
you
not
have
spend the money.
$600,000 you're spending.
But you do understand, Shaman?
No, authorize it, not spend it.
We're authorizing it, we're not spending it. So
Government spends it.
Entertain a motion, or we want to
So
read?
I'm going to read the remaining ordinances
Go
into
ahead.
the record.
Okay.
And they're long. Ordinance 17-19, an ordinance appropriating up to $661,000 from the Municipal Open Space Recreation and Historic Preservation Trust Fund of the Borough of Tenafly. Ordinance number 17-20, an ordinance to amend section 13-16.6 of chapter 3 Borough Regulations entitled Violations and Penalties of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly. Ordinance number 17-21, an ordinance to amend chapter 21 entitled Parks, Playgrounds, and Recreation Areas of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly in order to prohibit dogs in certain playground areas. Ordinance number 17-22, an ordinance to amend the fee schedule section 10-1.3 of the Revised General Ordinances of the Borough of Tenafly entitled Construction Code Fees. Ordinance number 17-23, bond ordinance providing for the Tennekill Tenafly Swim Club parking lot paving project, and by the Borough of Tenafly appropriating $400,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $380,000 bonds or notes of the borough to finance part of the cost thereof.
for comment on this now?
Not yet.
So do you need a motion on all this?
I need a motion and a second.
We
On
need to
each
call
and
a
every
comment.
one.
Everything.
You could motion second on each one, and then once I call you for the vote, you could say yes.
When do we have public comments?
But public comments, we need public comments.
Yes.
On all of them, or do it one at a time?
No, on all of them.
All right, so public comment on any of these ordinances.
Yeah.
You're getting approved, what do you? Yes.
Okay. No. I just don't understand how the Board of Education uses the municipal lot between the clubs 90% of the time. 90%.
Joanna, we've heard you say this, so you don't have to tell us again, we
But
know
why
how you
can't you
feel.
change it?
We don't want to change it.
Why?
We just don't want to, we don't
No.
have to, we
What's your
don't.
reason?
Because it's distinguished, this is a municipal parking lot over here, we're distinguishing it, we're not describing it as ownership, we're describing it as a location. It's the location between the two swim
Yes,
clubs.
but the fact that it's been the way it is for a while, and it's called the swim club lot,
It's not gonna change anything. We've already, what this ordinance is doing is authorizing money to fix it. We're not asking the swim club for anything, we're never gonna ask them. We're entering into an agreement with the Board of Education that will maintain the parking lot. The swim club is out of it. We're just, it's just, that's the name of it, and we're not just inclined to change it. And you could, you know.
Can we move on?
it offends,
Please move on to
the
this.
people who are members of the tenant.
So noted.
That's right.
So
Okay.
noted.
It's offensive.
Okay, so
All right,
noted.
that's.
Yeah, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I
Why
just would
not the
like
Board of
to,
Education?
on 1719, I just would like to say that now Andrew McAsh, 50 Sherwood Road, and as I am on the board, the trustee of the Nature Center, I just want to remind the council that number one, we have a committee that will actually manage the execution of this with two consultants on the committee along with us, and we will manage every piece.
Who are the
That-
councilmen on the committee now?
Mr. Zeno, Councilman Zeno and Park.
Okay.
And in addition to that, as you guys have been told, every piece will have to be approved by the council. And the reason this number is so big is because Laser Consulting wanted to cover themselves in case the dredging material comes up as dirty, then the disposal cost is hundreds of thousands of dollars. If that is the case, we will have a discussion where that is worth it or not. The rest of it is a third of the cost. So
I think what we're planning on doing is reviewing it once again. I understand what you're saying, it's correct, it's the same as what was presented to us in the past. It's been a while, and I think the council would feel more comfortable just seeing the paperwork again.
So we don't.
Oh, we have it also, we just haven't looked at it in a while.
We have it.
Are we done public comment?
Yes.
No, well, are you finished?
So I just start clear, but it is the paperwork, it's been through, it's Mazur's numbers, and we're all gonna work hard to reduce the number.
Okay.
But I'm really asking the council not to, asking the council to pass it so we can maintain momentum
I think
and
if we
start
ever
the
got finished
planning
with
part.
public comment, we would pass it.
Thank you very much.
Wait, Paul had his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Paul.
Yeah, no, the way I look at this, it's a lot of money. From being an accounting person, it is one holistic project, has to be treated as such. It has various stages. Some stages only get kicked in if something happens previous. Do we trust the committee, the Nature Center Commission, the committee and our representatives on it, that they will do the right thing and keep us posted along the way?
But it's not the committee, it's going to be this body that decides whether or not to spend it.
Understood, but are we trusting that we're going to be given the information that?
Can I address the trust issue?
It's not a trust issue.
No, but let me.
It's the money.
I want to say something, okay, please. This is about the trust. This is designed because we don't trust anyone. In other words, this is about trust but verify. At every stage of this project, you can say no to spending money on dredging, on anything else. All we're doing here is saying, in the worst-case scenario, this will be the cost, and we're not putting our heads in the sand. But what we're doing is, John, what we're doing is not putting our heads in the sand and saying it might only cost $300,000. We're saying in the worst-case scenario, this is the number. And at every stage in the process, like If we vote yes on this tonight, no dredging, no dam can start tomorrow, because it has to come before the council again to approve the designs and approve the $50,000 and to go out to bid. So nothing can happen without this body approving every step of the way. And so even though you're going to vote no on it, and I completely respect that, I just want to say, you're still protected. The borough is still protected.
The key words are trust and respect.
Right, trust and respect, and trust and verify.
Paul,
All right, where are we here?
A motion to adopt ordinances 17-19 through 17-23.
Is there a second?
I need a motion.
A motion, please.
So then, what does that mean? How do I vote yes for some and no for some?
Just say
You
no
can
on
say
no on that one.
accept.
Just like
Okay,
Max did before.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay, he's absent. Councilmember Bash.
No on 17, 19, yes on all the other ones.
Councilmember Hayter.
No on 17, 19, yes to the others.
Councilmember Park.
Yes to all.
Councilmember Stefanowicz.
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Paul, I
Okay.
was banking on you.
Yeah, it's told you how much you have.
Committee reports.
Committee reports, my favorite. Dan, you have anything?
No, I do not, I just don't want it.
Yes, we had a meeting of the Recreation Board. So I think I talked about this a little bit last time. Did we bring up the issue of the girls' rec softballs being returned to the rec department? Mr. Mayor?
I'm sorry.
The girls' rec softballs being returned to the rec department for management?
Yes, what's the question?
It's not a question. I think we talked about this separately. That's why I'm thinking I said it already.
Yes.
So we talked about that issue.
Well, that's nothing really, if our recreation department submits a budget with, that's really the time, it's really not a major decision for us.
Okay, so
If
I'm
they
reporting it to the-
recommend it, yeah, oh, you're reporting it.
I'm reporting it.
I'm not-
We need more parent volunteers, and that's why it's going back to the rec department for management. There was discussion that the rec board had regarding this issue of one entity maintaining all the fields. It was a lively discussion. There was really no resolution in terms of a recommendation of what they would like to do. It'll be taken under further advisement. And I think that's, the board wants a new skate park located along the street.
I'm sorry.
In other words, they're asking to move the current skate park so that it is along the street as opposed to where it is now, so that it won't be hidden by all the trees and the shrubbery. And they'd like us to think about that in the future.
We put it next to the dog park.
No, put it next to the soccer field.
Which
The
side?
soccer cage. The soccer cage.
Where? Where the parking lot is?
Well, and then trade, in other words, take the skate park as it is now, turn it back into grass and woods, and then take some grass next to the parking lot and put the skate park there, so it's on Tenafly Road, so that everyone can see it from the street.
I think it would fit there.
If it would fit there, right. I haven't done any measurements.
I don't think that the area that was left for parking.
But
First of all,
something to
I
look
don't
at.
think we could do that because it's a C1 stream, and I don't think you're going to be able to take down.
And that's possible. That's, I'm just passing along what they're asking.
Well, I mean, I agree with their concept. I think the skate park needs to be more visible.
Completely.
So
Completely. We
Yeah.
all agree on
Yeah.
that.
So maybe
next to the dog park, you're right.
Well, no, I don't.
Are you
think
kidding?
I don't think it's going to work. We'd have to take down a lot of trees. But
My dogs doesn't go on skates.
maybe what we could do, and this is, is remove as much vegetation as possible between the brook and the skate park, so that the skate park would truly become visible from the street. I mean, it's not that far away. It's just
Right.
It's just thickly.
and it's not trees we're talking about. It's really brush.
Correct. And that's all I have.
I just wanted to let you know that the mayors have been active. We had a breakfast a week and a half ago, and the prosecutor came and spoke to us again. And once again, the major topic is opiates and the addiction situation in towns like Tenafly. We also talked briefly about what happened to Bergen Regional Hospital is now Newbridge Hospital. The new name.
That's like Bergen Pines, the old Bergen Pines?
It's got a new name. I'm not exactly sure how much they paid a consultant to come up with that name. But very optimistic. The county has a new management team in there, and they're looking to make that a high-class facility. I think centering on addiction issues and some other issues. It also has an emergency room and a thing like that, but I don't look at it as competing with Englewood and Hackensack and Valley hospitals, but hopefully to complement them. I don't know.
They're going to accept now all insurance?
Well, they always do.
No, they don't.
No?
No.
But it depends what you're going in there for, I guess.
Yeah, I guess when I have to go for loony stuff myself.
Today, the mayors took a trip to the Freedom Tower complex. It was a wonderful trip. We had a meeting. First, we had a meeting with the executive director of the Port Authority and a couple of his right-hand people. A lot of this was organized by Karen Turner, who lives in town and is now appointed to the Port Authority Board of Directors. She joined us. We advocated for the bus terminals and for a tunnel under the river. Kevin O'Toole, who is the chair of the board of directors, is a former mayor, I think, of Glen Rock, or Glen Ridge, rather. Or no, maybe it's Wayne. But anyway, he's a New Jersey guy.
He's a senator.
He was a state senator. Also, what's his name? Rick Cotton was there. He's the executive director. He's from New York, but he supports both the tunnel and the bus terminals. So hopefully we're going to get some, it's going to move in the right direction. Everybody understands time is money, and we're running out of time. So hopefully that's going to go higher on their priority list. We found it to be a very favorable meeting, and we followed that with a tour of the Oculus, which is a spectacular thing. If you've never been there, it's a transportation hub. I think they have something like 11 subways. The path tubes go there, and it's I described it as a 21st century Grand Central Station. I mean, Grand Central Station is, unbelievable. Well, this is a modern version of that. It's just spectacular in its appearance. So if you haven't been down there, we didn't get to the museum. We didn't have time for the museum, and the observation deck was basically closed because of the weather. So we're going to go, well, I know I'm going to go back. There's plenty to see there, and I think you'd find it interesting. Shama, you have a
I have
report?
2 committee reports, Mayor. I attended the Board of Adjustment meeting. This was on October 23rd, Monday. It was a very nice, short meeting.
Those are the best kind?
Those are the best kind. They had one application which was withdrawn without prejudice. They had the application of this Temple Sinai, which had earlier come before them, and the board had suggested some changes. They came back with an amended application, which was approved, and that was the meeting. It was very quick. The other meeting I attended was the Senior Center Board meeting. And amongst the other things they mentioned, they thought that they had a very successful participation at the community night. And there's going to be a holiday craft vendor fair at the center on November 27th. And they're looking for vendors. If anybody knows anybody who might be interested, is $40 a table. And of course, the Barbara Steinfeld project, which we already discussed the letter. The other issue that came up was Wi-Fi issues at the center, which I've discussed with Mark and with Jewel. Jewel is handling it. And lo and behold, the last thing they said was, we should discuss a new senior center. So I said, let's be very clear, do you mean a senior center at this location? But I don't think they haven't really fleshed out any idea. It's just that the space is getting really tight, and
victims of our own popularity.
Yeah, and we need to all have some kind of conversations at some point about what can be done to increase the space, to have more parking, and it's something that's there. I don't know at which point we can discuss this, maybe around budget time or something, but this was brought up at the senior center.
Okay, well, I'm hoping, for those of you who may not be aware of it, the CVS building was sold. And the owners of that property, I believe, also own the parking lot across from the senior center, which basically right now is not being used.
About 6 cars at the most.
Maybe there'll be an opportunity for us to purchase that parking lot, and that would be helpful, A, for the senior center currently, and if we ever did decide to build a new senior center, the possibility of moving it across the street and then using the current site for parking is a possibility. But
Is that enough space there, though? Is that parking lot large enough?
Well, combine that with the TV shop parking lot.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm not an engineer.
And if you
but-
make it 2 floors, it's more than enough.
Well, I'm not sure senior centers want to be on 2 floors, but yeah, that's a
Well,
possibility.
you can have elevators.
I'm not sure that the majority of the senior people want the center to be, every time we have a discussion, they go back and forth on it.
Yes.
So-
I mean,
But
they
I
really
think
don't
we
know
all
themselves.
agree that,
The
it's
need
a-
is there. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
just-
it's an old building that's not really meant to be a building.
Yeah, so what we ask also the senior center is that, okay, you're running out of space. In order for us to have an intelligent conversation, please tell us how much more space is needed. So if we are to discuss the new senior center, we have to plan for a certain amount of space.
Well, that'll be the purview of Shama's committee, not yours.
No, it's,
Yeah,
we
her
were
committee-
together at a meeting.
But they're going to look at it, and I don't know how realistically they can project, but let's see what they come up with.
Once
But
again,
right now, this
I
place is packed.
Yeah, one of the things I think we can do is look at other senior centers. There's one, I think, is it in Harrington Park, Jewel, or what they keep getting community grants for? Is it Harrington Park has one of the towns up there has a senior center. Maybe it's Norwood. or-
Haworth has one, Northville has one.
Creskill has one, but that's smaller.
We need to look and see. Well, one of the things we do is we attract a lot of people from out of
Yes,
town.
that's what.
Which gives us.
That's part of it.
That's actually most of it.
And I don't think that's a negative, but we need to make sure that the benefits outweigh the
costs,
the detriments, and work on those benefits and try and cut back on the detriments. Anything else, Max? You have anything?
Well, the meeting, we did not have a meeting. We had a senior citizens day last weekend at the senior center, and was, extremely well received. It was attended by almost 70 people. All the presentations were very well received, extremely successful, so it was a very well done and organized day.
Yeah, I would second that. I would second that. I think all the attendees really truly appreciated it.
Yeah, and we learned a lot.
Paul, you have anything?
The Welcome Committee met. They've decided they'd like to try to streamline the book by making the list of current businesses available upon request, because it's difficult to update and it's always perpetually out of date. So they've decided to say when it's time to make a book, or when someone would like to see the list of businesses, we can provide it. That's what their concern was.
Couldn't they put up like a page on our website which can be updated?
We have.
There is.
Yeah.
It's part of how important they see a
No, what I mean is
perpetually updated one in the book itself.
link to the book, in the book.
I think so.
Yeah, link it in the book.
That's it.
Okay. Under new business, we have an introduction of an ordinance.
No, we'll go through the introduction of the ordinance after that. I have other issues. Are you going to
Shama, you want to read it?
Okay. I move to introduce and pass on first reading Ordinance 17-24 and set the hearing for November 20th, 2017 at 8 p.m. or soon thereafter in the council chambers of the Tenafly Municipal Center. So I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Is that?
Ordinance number 17-24, an ordinance to fix the salary, wage, and compensation of employees of the Department of Public Works represented by Local 342, Long Island Public Employees United Marine Division, International Longshoremen's Association, AFL-CIO, for the calendar years 2017, 2018, and 2019. Councilmember Bash?
No.
Councilmember Hayter?
Yes.
Councilmember Park?
Yes.
Councilmember Scarnowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer?
Yes.
Okay, Mayor's remark.
Okay, I have other issues with the new, under the new, new business. We had, and Laura mentioned over here, our Democratic candidates have scheduled a meeting with the senior center on tomorrow, which is 25th, I think. And I talked to our lawyer. I also notified Jewel that we will have flyers over there, and I was basically told it's absolutely our right. And we put flyers all over. And basically, Peter, you removed the flyers from the center.
No, I didn't.
Well, they were. I talked to the administrator over there and told me that you basically removed the flyers
I
from
put the flyers on your desk.
Well,
And you didn't have permission to put the flyers all over. You had permission to
I
put them
had
on the
the
billboard. You
which
didn't
is
have
basic-
permission to hand them out personally, which you were doing.
I
This
have
wasn't a
permission.
political meeting.
It doesn't
This was a-
matter.
Yes, it does matter.
No, it doesn't.
But we have the constitutional right.
Absolutely, we have the
In the middle of a senior.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't
It is
matter. We
still our
have the
right.
constitutional
We
right to
checked
do
with
that.
our borough attorney.
Well, that's not what the borough attorney told me.
No,
You know.
hold it.
Yeah.
The discussion I had with Max was whether or not they could put the flyers in the senior center.
Yes.
That's right.
And was our understanding it was going to be on the bulletin board.
Yes.
So I didn't have any discussion with anybody about handing things out. Now, after the fact, I think there were some questions about, well, if you were there at a meeting. And I'm not talking about a senior citizens meeting, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about the meet and greet. Obviously, you can hand out
Absolutely.
flyers.
The meet and
I don't
greet.
know anything about handing. I just heard about that today. So don't say that was discussed with me ahead
So,
of time.
anyway, it is our right to hand
I'm not
out
saying it was
flyers.
wrong,
It is our
but-
right to place
In
them
the middle of a senior citizens event, we have never politicized any of those
It's
things. I
immaterial.
don't
Doesn't
understand
matter.
where.
That
It's
doesn't matter.
immaterial.
It doesn't matter?
It doesn't matter.
Absolutely,
If
it's
we have the
immaterial.
right, we
So
can
let me
vote.
ask you a question, Shama. Do you have the right to put a billboard anywhere you want in town?
No, we
Why
don't.
not?
We're not-
Why not? Freedom of speech.
No,
You
we-
do have the right to put a billboard or a sign anywhere in town.
No, that
It's
has nothing to do
protected
with
by,
that.
it's protected by the Constitution.
No.
We have an understanding in this community, somebody earlier in the day said, we don't want this town to look like all the other towns.
Well,
I don't understand what your need is in the middle of a event that's not political to make it political.
the whole idea is we don't want to make it. What the need is for the people to know that there is a meeting with the candidates. If they want to come and talk to them, it's not basically telling them vote for them. It says you have the right to talk to the candidates, and nobody can stop us from doing that. That's our basic
It's
right.
all right. Why are we
There is
stopped from
nobody that can stop us
You're an
from.
officer of this borough.
That's correct.
So you should not be seen as stopping us from.
I'm not stopping you from doing anything.
Yeah.
I mean, you are. You're removing the material.
Listen, this is no different than Councilman Bash suggesting that we use the senior bus to pick up seniors and go to your meeting. I mean, there's got to be a limit for
We
everything.
never said that.
You did say that.
No,
You
no.
didn't ask for permission to use the senior bus?
No, we're going to provide our own transportation.
We are providing
Now
our
you are, after
No,
you were
no,
denied.
no,
You
it
never
was
denied, never was asked.
Nobody asked
Excuse
for the
me,
senior
excuse
bus.
me.
Who asked for the senior
I'm
bus?
sorry, I don't mean to put her, I don't.
Excuse me, who said that we had asked for the senior
No,
bus?
we never.
He said it to me
No.
after he was denied.
No, absolutely. Nobody denied me because I never asked.
Excuse me, I don't mean to put the administrator on the spot.
Well, let's put
Was
her
that-
on the
Was that
spot.
a request?
Let's put on this one.
They didn't
No,
ask
there
for the
was
senior
no
bus.
request.
That's another.
The transportation listed on the flyer meant I would drive people down to the meeting.
It was not suggested to you
No,
that we
it
use
was
the
not.
senior services, senior center the bus. to
Not
pick
at
up
all.
people for this meeting?
The initial email indicated that transportation was going to be provided.
Yes.
Yes.
And if you recall though, the initial email was during normal business hours. And that was why there was a question as to whether or not that was the intent. It was never spelled out.
So that was never the intent.
It was never the intent, but I think it caused some confusion.
It might
because
have
the
caused some
original-
confusion, but
Yeah,
we
because
never
the
found it.
original
You could have
request
asked a
was doing
question and
normal
got a
No, it's
clarification.
never a question.
But you can't just assume something without
I
understanding.
didn't assume anything. I had a conversation with the councilman who was upset that the bus couldn't be used.
No, we never even discussed that. Anyhow, the issue was basically we have the right to distribute it if you like it or not, and you have absolutely no right to basically take those funds. It's our constitution, and I need to find basically what happened if somebody from the council, mayor and council, starts interfering with our right to basic election knowledge and informing the people about what we want to do. We didn't ask to vote. We asked basically to have a meeting to meet the people. That's the only issue that we wanted.
I just want to say something about distributing things during a meeting and talking, about the election during a meeting. First of all, it is a public meeting place, but there is structure to the meetings, and someone obviously runs the meeting.
Sure.
All right. Although it's not illegal. And if you were recognized and allowed by whoever's running the meeting to say, sure, you can do this, it certainly, someone couldn't say, if they said, you can't do it, no, you can't do it, you're not allowed to. If the borough made a regulation saying you can't do it, I think that would be an infringement of your constitutional rights. However, there's no law, and the Constitution understands that certain limits are placed upon free speech and free assembly if they're reasonable and equally applied. So I don't know what happened, but yes, it's a public forum, it's a public meeting place, you have the right to free speech, but still there's structure to a meeting. And whoever runs the meeting, if they say, you can't do this now, I don't want to let anybody do this no matter who you are, whether it's for campaigning or just free political speech, you have to wait your turn. That would be.
But nobody did, Bill.
But I'm saying, I'm not saying what was done was right or wrong. I'm just trying to explain that, it's like someone comes into this meeting and says, I want to distribute, flyers for the election in Cresskill, for whatever reason they would want to do.
What'd you say?
Put them out.
I'd say you can't do it, because we'd say we're in the middle of a meeting and there's structure to the meeting and there's rules.
We had basically a big poster that was taken down.
Who took it down?
Becky, at your request.
I didn't tell her to take a poster down. I don't want to put the employees in the middle of anything. It's not fair.
And there are places, you can't just walk around Borough Hall sticking stuff up on every wall, because there are proper places to put things. There are posting boards, bulletin boards, there's places for it. And someone couldn't say, you know what, this is a public bulletin board, you're not allowed to put your
which is absolutely
No,
wrong.
we did not put it up all over the walls. They were put in the poster boards in the senior center, and then they were taken down from there. That's what I'm complaining about.
I was agreeing with you, so.
Yeah, he was agreeing.
I was agreeing with you. I wasn't
We
saying
are
that's what
allowed
you
to do that, and I want to make sure that we are here to enforce the free speech and liberty and practically, and we are not to basically try to censor or anything like that.
Well, that's it.
So I just have a question. Out of ignorance, I'm going to ask the question. Does the senior center have any process or rules about how they make announcements? Do they? Like in terms of rules of what they put on bulletin boards and how they hand out things?
It's not the senior center all by itself. I mean, they're still under the borough.
I'm just, is there any, so my point is, if there isn't a real clear process now of what we find acceptable or not acceptable, why don't we put one together? so that for the future, everyone understands where they stand and what can be done and what can't be done.
We do. I mean, basically, the overriding policy is that you do not conduct political activity in borough facilities during normal business hours. And I think that was the
Which is what was being done.
issue during the luncheon, is that the luncheon or the meeting wasn't something that was separate and apart from the borough or the senior center. It was a senior center sponsored activity.
But you just said it's not illegal.
But was it open to the general public?
Yes.
So, like anybody.
Absolutely.
Well,
It was
pre-registered.
So it's not illegal. I just want his answer.
The question isn't, remember, the question isn't whether it's illegal or not illegal. It's whether or not the restriction of you're not allowed to do it is illegal or illegal.
That's what I'm asking.
Sean, but let me ask you a question. Your mother, my mother, are sitting having lunch in the senior center. Do you think it's appropriate for a councilman to walk over and hand them a flyer and ask them to come to an event? You think
Not
that's
ask
okay?
them,
I'm
tell
speaking
them.
to Shama.
Yeah,
You think
tell
that's
them.
appropriate?
Why not?
Why not?
Why
I mean,
not? In an event,
How about,
why not?
how about if I'm sending out a flyer for, against abortions? Or,
there are 1,000
You
people doing
can,
that.
if you have the right, Mayor, to circulate whatever
I'm
you
not
wish.
saying there's no right, but we have.
I am, and
Jewel
it is
just
up
said-
to
Jewel just said-
whoever's attending.
Jewel just said, we
listen,
have a
to
pol-
tear it up and throw it away. Okay,
We have a policy, okay? It's been in place for a long time, whether you care to acknowledge it or not, and I think in rational times you will acknowledge it. We don't politicize on borough property during business hours.
But it's not a.
It's borough property,
But it's
and it was
not
business
legal.
hours.
It's not legal.
Okay, so you're saying.
I'm just saying
you're saying,
we are permitted to do that. It is our right to do that, and that is what I'm.
okay, so you're saying we should discard that policy?
If
I
it's
don't know.
illegal, we should certainly
No,
should.
it just has to be, hold it, okay. So they're starting to get like off topic and talking about things the wrong way. A policy, as long as it's equally applied and fair, so it doesn't totally restrict speech, it is perfectly fine. What's not fine is doing things willy-nilly or ad hoc. I'm not going to let you do this, but I'm going to let someone else do something that's similar to it. A policy has to be equally applied and made as narrow as possible when it restricts speech. All right, but we all have to have rules. You can't jump up in a theater and shout fire, as we all know.
Yeah.
That's the old
But that's
example.
not-
But so if there's a meeting, if it's a regular meeting place that's open to the general public and anybody can go in and then gather and sit down, if there are no rules about politicking, you're not there as a councilman, you're there as a regular person. You can talk to people and
Absolutely. And we
but-
had
I
this.
think let's.
But the question is, can't interfere with the function
It
of.
did not.
Well, that's a matter of
facility.
opinion.
Peter,
That's
so
where you
let's
get
stop with
down
the
to
legal
things.
Yeah, I
discussion
would tell
about-
you, there were a number of, Sharma, I don't know that you were there at the time. There were a number of people that were very upset about it. At least 3 or 4 of them complained to me. So don't say that it didn't interfere with the function.
Even if they complain to you,
Right.
we are still entitled to, in a public forum, to tell them that there is a meeting
Well,
with
let
a
me ask you a
certain-
question. Do you have any of those flyers here?
I don't know, I didn't
Why
bring
don't you
it.
hand them out now?
There is a
What's-
senior.
what's the difference?
Basically, it's not the audience that we need.
But you wouldn't
And
be able
second-
to anyway.
Yeah, but then, but then-
Hold on, why wouldn't they be able to?
Right, because
Why wouldn't
there
they
are
be?
certain rules of procedure that apply to.
Exactly.
Can I make a recommendation?
It's getting out of.
Can I make
this
a, okay,
is
Bill,
an-
please,
this
can I
is-
make a recommendation? Because this is getting ridiculous.
Yeah.
How about Jewel and Shama, I would, respectfully suggest it, the two of you get together to discuss what the current policy is and what the issues that you have with it, and come up with suggestions to make it more open and more opportunity to get information to the seniors, so that the next time we know what to do.
It has nothing with the it has nothing to do with getting information to the seniors. This is getting information
I
to
understand.
anybody.
I understand. What I'm suggesting is, though, is to take this conversation offline
Okay.
and to get moving it forward.
I'm game for that.
Right? That's what I'm suggesting.
I'm game for that.
Avoided the issue.
Makes sense?
Okay. Any other new business?
Oh, I have an item.
Yeah.
We our network has been infected with a virus. If anybody receives a strange email that has our names inverted, that has invoice attached,
Yeah, I've already
purchase order
received it.
attached, it's spam.
Yeah.
You know what emails that we send, what we transmit. If you have any questions, don't even respond to the email. Call. If you're not sure, do not click on anything, because it's how the Trojan starts spreading. And what it does, it steals address books and then transmits them to whoever you had in your address book. And even though they're working on it, it's very, it's like resistant to the antibiotic. It's still spreading.
I really thought that you could send me an email that time, you know.
No, I'm sending you an invoice, trust me.
And luckily I didn't open it, but it looked very suspicious.
Yeah.
Peter, I want to put one thing on the agenda for next meeting, just a general topic, a general discussion about the Nature Center.
Sure.
As an agenda item for the next meeting.
Under the mayor's remarks, I'd just like to say that it's becoming more and more difficult to keep this ship running forward under an even keel. I sit with 6 Democrats. Okay, I've sat with 6 Democrats for many terms. I've sat with 3 Republicans and 3 Democrats, and I'll be honest with you, people got along a lot better, 3 and 3, even though the general public didn't understand that. My goal is to have this town run well. Every year there's an election. Some people refer to it as silly season, and with good reason. You can talk about constitutional rights. You can talk about what your individual rights are, but the reality of it is there's a time and a place, for proper place and a proper time for everything. This is America. Nobody says there's no such thing as free speech, but like every good thing, there's got to be limitations of some sort, and our attorney described what those limitations should be: fair and well balanced. Nobody questions that. Okay. You want to put politics aside, I think it makes it very easy to look at things. But there's people at this table that just can't put politics aside, and I think that the town it's very detrimental to the town, and it's going to continue to get worse as I see it, and that's very unfortunate. Not for me, the mayor, an independent, but for the town. And I respect everybody at this table, but when you put politics above everything else, it's the town that suffers, not the mayor. I just want you to think about that. You want to read the closed session, please?
You just introduced politics.
Too municipal.
Resolved in compliance with NJSA 10:4-12, the mayor and council go into closed executive session to discuss following matters. 2 are personal matters, one involving the DPW director search and an update on that, and the second is discussing borough administrator goals. That's a personnel matter, actually. And 2 attorney-client legal matters, one a potential acquisition of property, and the second is discussing the planning board litigation involving Headmat versus the planning board. Council will be taking this meeting. Release to the public at the time the matter is resolved. After this closed executive session, the mayor and council reconvene in the Richard D. Wilson Committee Room to adjourn this public meeting.
Motion, please.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
5-minute break.